Good evening, and welcome to the May 17th meeting of the Manhattan City Commission. This is a legislative meeting, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance first. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do any commissioners, this is the time for commissioners' comment. Do any of you have announcements or something you'd like to state?
I just wanted to say, I think tomorrow's the last day for USD 383 school, so hopefully they have a wonderful summer. Typically, we match with USD 383 and our city pools, like on Memorial Day weekend, so they can go off and swim. But our pools are opening on May 28th, and school's out tomorrow, but there'll be lots of other activities to do in between. But if you haven't bought a pass, please go and get a pass. All three of our pools will be open, and there's plenty of activities and within our Parks and Rec department as well. Thank you.
This is a really busy time of year, and we are all have been so busy with graduation and all of the end of the spring events that we're about to enter that slower time in the community, summer. And so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. The next item, of course, is the consent agenda. And the items on the consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda for more discussion. Does the commission have any questions or comment on any of the consent agenda items? And that one item was pulled, right, from the revised?
Yes, Mayor, we did revise the agenda. We removed item F1, which was to be a consideration of the benefit district, but we didn't get all of the necessary signatures in time, so we're moving that to the June meeting.
Okay. And I have a note here that item D1, which is the selling of the bonds, GOB bonds, requires a vote of 4. If that's an issue, then we'll revisit it. If there are no questions, no comments, I'll open the public comment section for the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to speak about a consent agenda item? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment section.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. City Clerk Brenda Wolf, would you call the roll?
Mayor Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. And the next item, of course, is the general agenda, and the first item is the Aggieville parking garage, and Jared Wassinger, and someone I haven't.
The only thing I have to say is I wanted to introduce Adrian Tucker, our new
There you go.
parking services manager, who's going to be overseeing the Aggieville parking garage, the downtown parking garage, as well as for now the on-street parking in the Aggieville and downtown districts. But with that, Adrian's going to cover most of tonight. So,
Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you and good evening.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. As Jared said, we will be talking about the parking management plan for the city for 2023. But first, before we talk about where we're going to talk about where we've been as a reminder. The Aggieville parking garage groundbreaking took place December of 2020. There were 2 parking management work sessions with Walker Consultants in March and September of 2021. Out of those came the key recommendations from a majority of the City Commission that there be a fee associated with the use of the parking garage versus a general support fund to support parking technology, personnel, operations, and maintenance, that license plate recognition technology should be used instead of the current method of parking enforcement, that we adopt a parking ambassador culture versus a more punitive enforcement culture that you see with some municipalities, and that we delay the consideration of on-street paid parking until majority of the streetscape construction is complete, and that we provide options for hourly rates, permitted parking, and lease stalls for the garage. Currently, as of 2022, I was hired February 7th, and the parking garage did open on April 15th. Currently, as a reminder, the garage does have 445 stalls, 9 of which are ADA, 2 are van accessible. We are offering complimentary parking until January of 2023. We are enforcing the 48-hour parking rule. We are seeing on average about 80 cars a day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, of mostly Aggieville employees. That has dropped a little bit now that school is out and students have returned home. We are seeing a lot of short-term parking of less than an hour, common for food pickups, primarily for Chipotle. Yeah, who knew? And as I said, we have very few students right now using the garage. I've been noticing 10 to 12 a day on average. Obviously, because summer is here, that's no longer applicable. But I have only so far collected 4.5 weeks worth of data. As the year progresses, the data I collect over the summer is going to look different than the data I collect in the fall.
So a student is a student if they have a backpack, or how do you tell a student?
Generally speaking, they do have a KSU parking permit hanging in the window.
Okay.
So, or they have backpacks, and they're generally walking towards the direction
Yep,
of campus and not
university.
Aggieville.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Thanks.
yeah. So in talking about operations in LPR in 2023, we will be talking about the license plate recognition operations, a permitting system for the garage, the use of pay stations, the use of pay by app, and our data analytics. We would propose an enforcement schedule of Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now, currently on street in Aggieville, there's 3-hour parking. That is Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That will not change, but we would like to enforce parking in the garage from 5 to 9 p.m. Extend that out to 10 p.m. on Fridays, and then on Saturdays enforce the garage from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Sundays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have a proposed office schedule of Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, to in line with city operations, and the office is currently located at 1318 Laramie Street in the parking garage. Currently, we have 2 full-time enforcement positions budgeted. We will need 2 additional part-time parking ambassadors, which, going back to the changing to the ambassador culture, the current officers will be renamed as parking ambassadors instead of enforcement officers. We will need the use of 1 full-time office manager or senior level administrative assistant to manage the customer service department, permitting, and administrative work for the department, and 2 part-time customer service representatives to staff the front desk of the parking office. If we're gonna have office hours open to the public where people can come in and ask questions, maybe help sign people up for permits or help them pay for parking, we will need to staff the front desk. In addition, we will need a maintenance worker to help upkeep and clean the garage as needed. Our draft expenditures for 2023 are looking at about $574,000. Of that, $301,000 are employee wages, $69,000 are contracts, which include our parking management company we will be using to help us manage the garage, as well as contracts for the security system or the security cameras we have in the garage, and maintenance at around $204,000 a year. The maintenance includes snow removal. I don't really have a great way of budgeting that because I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the weather, but on average, you see 4 to 6 snow events a year. That also includes de-icing of the garage, sweeping, power washing, restriping, general maintenance, repairing any damage due to vandalism. Unfortunately, we had some minor vandalism this weekend in the garage. as an example. But overall, people have mostly been respectful. Our proposed rate structure for the garage. I would like to propose that the first hour of the garage is free. As I said, we are seeing a lot of under 1 hour use of the garage for food pickups. I would like to offer them the complimentary 1 hour free parking. $2 per hour after and a $10 daily max. Currently the garage at KSU, it's $2 an hour and a $16 daily max. So we're right at market rate for those, coming in a little under the KSU garage. Monthly parking, full-time employees, we're looking about $40 a month for a permit, and part-time employees, which is defined as less than 30 hours a week, at $25 a month. A part of our office manager's job responsibilities will be to process these permits applications. I would like to propose that they are offered on a 30-day basis and that we do not lock people into contracts for permits like what you see at KSU. The reason being is that a lot of the employees in Aggieville are transient in nature, meaning they may only work a month or two or a semester or a year and then they leave. I do not want to lock students into extended parking that they're either not going to use or not going to be able to pay for. So instead, have our permit holders basically sign up every 30 days for a permit. We would like to offer reserved parking on the 4th floor at $100 a month per stall. And the reserved rate is valid Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. So we can sell those stalls to the public in the evenings and during the weekends. I have had quite a bit of interest in reserved parking in the garage, as Covetris being an employer that I have spoken to who is agreeable to that rate. I would like to offer an event rate of $10, and the reason why you want to have an event rate for some place like the garage is that typically when you have large events in a district like Aggieville, people come, they park, they pay for maybe a couple hours, but they stay 3 or 4. They end up having a drink, or they end up having a meal, or they meet up with friends, and they stay longer than expected. And the last thing we want is people to come back to their cars in the garage with a ticket in the windshield because they didn't pay for the appropriate amount of parking. That's not the last impression you want to leave any guest for an event. So the way that you kind of supersede that is by having a flat rate. I'm recommending the max rate, which is $10, and the ability to adjust those rates for events. So if we want to maybe lower that by $1 or $2, we could, or if we want to increase that by $1 or $2, we have that ability. In addition, I would like to implement a program called the Safe Driver Program. That is a rate that is valid Friday and Saturdays from 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. the next day for a flat rate of $8. So the idea I had behind the Safe Driver Program was that you could come to Aggieville on a Friday or Saturday night, park in the garage, you pay a flat rate, which is basically the cost of a drink and a tip, to park your car until 12 p.m. the next day. The garage is well lit. We have security cameras. You can park overnight. People don't have to worry about leaving their vehicles on the street. They don't have to, worry about getting a citation. And hopefully, we can curb some drinking and driving, right? As I said, we plan on starting enforcement at 10 a.m. the next day. This gives people that extra 2 hours the next day to get to their vehicles and move them, or continue to pay for parking the next day. Our 2023 revenue projections are listed. My revenue assumptions, or my occupancy assumptions, are based off of some data that I have now, also in talking to employees in Aggieville and who would want to purchase a parking permit. Again, the reserve stalls are based on talking to employees and whether or not they would want a reserve stall, and roughly about an 85% occupancy rate for events and on Friday and Saturday nights. Our projected revenues would be around $577,000. If you go back to our expenditures, it's about $574,000. So this first year, we really are looking to break even, which I think we can do. The main goal is that we do not want the taxpayer to subsidize the garage. We want it to be able to pay for itself. And hopefully in the future, if we do make revenue off of this garage, we want to be able to invest that back into Aggieville through improvement projects. We will be returning to the commission at a later date to request approval for new and amended ordinances, which will address the parking fees, traffic and parking regulations, the permit program, reserved parking contracts and enforcement, the 2023 budget, and the 2023 ordinance resolution for rate schedule. To help me manage the parking in Aggieville and as we move forward with the city, I'd like to hire the IPS group. They are a parking management provider that will provide basically a full suite of services. So they do the permitting, they do enforcement, they provide the pay stations. I did reach out to 7 other providers that are listed there. And really, the IPS group and T2 were the only 2 that offered what I call a full suite of services. They do everything. Whereas the other companies, they may have offered LPR and parking enforcement, or one did permits, or one had a pay by app. But they didn't offer it all. And what I didn't want to do is get into multiple contracts with multiple providers and pay multiple integration fees and have multiple 24-hour customer support options. I wanted one company that did it all. And out of my options, I had T2 and the IPS group. I've used T2 at KSU. They're a great company, but I found that their reporting and data analytics was a little cumbersome to use. I found myself really trying to extract the data and analytics that I needed and creating my own spreadsheets, and just for the cost and what you pay for it, it's something that they should be able to provide for you. And IPS really does fit that bill. They also have experience integrating with Tyler Technologies, which is a system our municipal court uses when adjudicating parking citations. So nothing at our courts needs to change. And I checked the references that they provided, and they do come highly recommended from other municipalities similar in size and scope to Manhattan, such as Rapid City, South Dakota, and Dubuque, Iowa. And my personal experiences with them throughout this process has been nothing short of amazing. They came to Manhattan to meet with me personally. I've gotten to see their equipment in person, play with it, see how it works. They've come to the garage to look at how the cameras are going to be installed, to talk about running a permitting program, to meeting with us multiple times on Zoom and meeting with the courts to talk about how they're going to integrate. And I believe that Tyler Kane, who is the Director of Business Development with IPS, is also on Zoom in this meeting. So if at any point you have any questions for him or IPS directly, you can ask. But again, so IPS is going to provide us with the fixed and mobile LPR enforcement for the garage and the vehicles. They'll manage the online permitting system for us. It says multi-space pay stations for the garage, and in the future they can expand with us. So if we want to do on-street parking in Aggieville and start charging for that, they can provide us with the pay stations to do so. They fully integrate with Park Mobile, which is the pay-by app that I plan on bringing to the garage. Currently, Park Mobile is used at KSU and at the airport, and I just wanted to take that same app and bring it to the garage. That way our users have one platform, one app that's consistent all throughout Manhattan. They do provide 24-hour customer service support that is complimentary, and their data management and analytics, as I said before, are superb. I've looked at what they offer, I've looked at the reports that they can generate, and it's exactly the kind of data that I need to be able to make smart decisions moving forward about parking operations for the city of Manhattan. Startup costs to include the LPR cameras and the pay stations are about $91,000. That is on par with other LPR providers. And the ongoing cost to include the cloud storage, the enforcement data, and the analytics is about $40,000 a year, which comes in about $10,000 to $15,000 less than most of their competitors. And again, their 24-hour technical support is complimentary. So today we are asking the city administrator to provide the city administration with feedback on proposed parking management plan for January 2023 implementation, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement with the IPS group for the purchase and installation of LPR equipment and parking management software for the Aggieville parking garage. Questions?
Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Adrian. I think that was very well done, and thank you for collecting the information for just the month and a half that it's been open. I know it's been hard for people to, one, know it's open, and two, how to get there to park. So that could have been some of the challenges for why people aren't parking there. I think once we have all of that construction done, they'll know exactly where to go and what to do.
I
So,
agree.
yeah, I think as far as students and all of that, employees and all of that. So I think it'll be good to see what happens in the fall. And as you keep track of that data a little bit more to see what kind of traction we have, and people going in and out, and as more employers also train their staff to let them know about what's available for their parking needs.
Part of the LPR is going to be used to enforce more accurately that 3-hour limit in Aggieville. So the idea is that Aggieville is going to have a geofence around it. And if you park within that geofence and the LPR camera captures your license plate, you have a 3-hour clock that starts. And if you're still parked within that geofence in that 3 hours, or after that 3 hours, you will receive a citation. The idea being that you need to park outside of Aggieville or park in the garage.
Right.
And our parking enforcement officer, Heath Romine, came up with a brilliant idea to put literature in with the current parking citations that state that the garage is open, where the garage is located, and to park there.
So I agree. So I think because whatever we adopt tonight won't be put in place, implemented till January, the parking system. So when we talk about hiring the ambassadors and everybody else, when does that hiring take place, and does that process start immediately? For example, the education process, as students come in, in the fall, or when do they start? Because we don't want them to learn about this after the fact. When do they start learning about the garage and how their license plate and the app and all of that? When does that take place?
Sure. So we are looking at hiring our staff. We would like to no later than the end of October. That gives us really 2 months of solid training on the equipment and all of the software on the back end to make sure that we have that securely under our belts. In addition, we plan on doing a public information campaign, if you will, of letting students know that the garage is open via, it could be the campus paper. I am a student at K-State as well, so putting something in the K-State Today, for example, reaching out to various student groups, reaching out to people who are receiving citations and continuing to provide them with the literature that the garage is open and that there will be a pay structure in January.
So, yeah, starting January. So if we have our fall football games, let's say, and people from, start parking in the garage, do you see, I think there used to be a shuttle, would there still be like a shuttle? And I'm assuming it'll be free because we're not going to implement the pay structure till January.
Correct. As far as there being a shuttle from the garage.
That's probably not on you, that's probably on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on everybody else.
I always tell people if the vehicle's moving, I'm not it.
No, yeah, just the garage. So I wanted to know, I think the way you outline the pay structure looks very reasonable. But I wanted to know if you have an idea, what do students pay currently for a semester for their parking tag?
So currently they pay annually.
Annually, not
So
semester.
not semester. So commuting students currently pay, I believe it's $198 for the academic year. If they leave before March of that academic year, they can turn their permit in and get a prorated refund for the portion that they did not use. Some people, for whatever reason, don't know that they can do that and lose out on the money, or they sell their permit to somebody else, which violates the parking rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, no, I was just asking because we're saying about $40 a month because you're right, employees may stay, may not, they might move, may change. I think that's very reasonable. I do think the hour free should probably be changed to a half-hour free.
Okay.
I don't know how long it would take for somebody to go pick up a meal, but it seems like an hour might be a bit much. I think a half hour seems more reasonable, and after the half hour, it could probably go to $2 or whatever it might be. I like the safe driver idea for the rates for people that want to leave their cars in there. I think we've had that conversation before, that they need to know it's safe and where it is, so it's not being towed. I think that's a very good idea. As far as the contract for the IPS, so I have a lot of questions about licenses and how all of this goes. So some students may have their parents' car, and if it's tracking their license, does that citation automatically go to their parents? Does it, I'm assuming it probably goes to the address that's.
It goes to the
that's
registered
registered.
owner of the vehicle like it currently does now.
Okay. But if it wasn't there, they would typically pull out a ticket, parking ticket, and they would pay for that. That's how I think it still is at the K-State garage.
For this year, yes. They are also implementing license plate recognition technology beginning in August. They're running it concurrently with gates down in the garage, the ticketing system, and the manual permits. They're doing that for a year to kind of work out the kinks, so to speak, and see how it's going to work on campus. And then in the fall of 2023, they are pulling the gates, and they're going to be operating the garage like we are in
Okay.
Aggieville.
So how does it work if it's a rental car?
So typically, with rental cars, it goes to the company, the citation, and it's up to the company to go after whoever was renting the vehicle at the time to recoup that loss. But it would be the rental car company that's paying the citation.
Okay. And also, students may borrow other people's cars, so I think that needs to be stated. I think that would be one of the most emails or communications or complaints that we might get is, that's not my car, I don't know why I have this. And somebody used their car to, if they were getting a citation of any kind.
And that currently happens now, where a student may be borrowing mom or dad's car and they park in Aggieville and they get a citation, and the student doesn't say anything. The mom gets pulled over and, oh, I have an unpaid parking citation. How did this happen? And they have to go to court. And so it's really no different than what we are doing now. What I would like to recommend at our next session when we talk about parking citation rates is that we offer a first warning on citations, and in that warning clearly outline why the person received the citation, how to prevent that from getting that citation again, and contact information for the parking department so that they can continue to ask questions.
And how soon do they get the citation? So if it goes through and it's detected, and it's parked there and it's detected, is it immediate? Is it 24 hours?
So there will be cameras installed at the entrance of the garage. So as a vehicle pulls in, it'll snap a picture of the license plate and capture that. And then an electronic clock starts, if you will. So whatever amount of time we want to give the system, typically 10 to 15 minutes, gives that person 10 to 15 minutes to park the vehicle, either pay for their parking by the app or pay at a pay station. And if they do not, then the license plate goes red in the system and a notification is sent to a parking ambassador that this person has not paid for parking. The ambassador comes, verifies, issues it a citation.
And you said there, you talked about the parking app. So we have a lot of alumni that come, and I myself am weary of apps. I use them as least frequently as possible, or download apps, very few apps as much as possible. So if someone is not comfortable downloading an app, do we have, like you said, the parking ambassadors around or anything like that if they want to pay differently? Or how would that work for somebody who's uncomfortable using an app?
So there are 2 pay stations located on the ground level of both stairwells that they can use. Also with Park Mobile, they do have the option that you do not have to download the app to use their platform. You can go online. I believe you can scan a QR code. Their online platform pops up, and you can also pay that way as well.
Okay.
And there'll be plenty of signage throughout the garage directing people to where the pay stations are located.
And if we go with the IPS system, Is there a warranty, a 5-year warranty, 4-year warranty, if we decide it's not really working for us?
So we will be signing a 1-year contract, and then after that 1 year, for whatever reason, we decide that that's not working for us, we can move on to somebody else. If we decide that they are working for us, and we can talk about extending that contract to 3 years or 5 years or whatever we feel comfortable with.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Commissioners, other questions?
Well, now we have to have some discussion, because I like the 1 hour free. And so now we've got to figure out who wants, which, if we get 3 for 1 hour or 3 for half an hour. But I'm for the whole hour free. That'll give people a chance to actually eat their sandwich, have a cup of coffee, and yak it up with their buddies and still get back. Because I think that's one of the things that is going to be bothersome to some of the business owners. It's like, the person's just going to come in and buy something and be gone half an hour. They shouldn't have to pay parking for, well, if they're for 40 minutes or something. So 1 hour is my vote. Secondly, just so to clarify what you said, so that anybody watching at home or here, when you say that we hope to collect $570,000 to break even to pay for things, all we're paying for is the parking system. There is zero money from parking going to pay for the garage, correct? Right? To pay
You
for
mean
the
like
actual
the
construction of
original?
the
Yeah,
garage.
correct.
Okay, so,
Correct.
yeah, what's paying for the garage is the TIF district, which is mostly being funded right now by the Courtyard Hotel and any other redevelopment that eventually happens. So when you're paying for parking in the Aggieville garage, you're not paying for the garage. You're paying for the garage to be maintained, to have the parking system, to have all the things that you've been talking about doing. Zero of the money is paying for the actual garage.
That is correct.
Okay. that's
And one
just
thing I'd like to say about the pay-by-app option as well. So if you do pay through Park Mobile, one of the things I really do like about the app is that before you run out of time, about 10 minutes or so, you receive a push notification that says, hey, you're about to run out of time. Would you like to add more time? And however many times we let them keep adding time is up to us. So people that do use that app will really kind of heat off parking citations. And
Yeah,
so
I
appreciate
used
that.
that when we were down in Fort Lauderdale, and those push notifications helped, because I was always staying longer than I thought I was going to, but I didn't want to overpay, and so that notification was very helpful. I thought of something else there for a second, but, so, for example, on people that use I know what it was. So if you get a red flag on the license plate, does Joe Ambassador walk all 3 floors trying to track down that license plate, or is there some easier way for him to figure out?
No,
where-
there's, the LPR technology's on the enforcement vehicle with the cameras, so as he's going through a drive lane, it's scanning
Okay.
the license plates.
Okay, so none of it's done manually by eyeballs, their own eyeballs. It's the machine that's,
Well, it is, but they will be verifying with their own eyeballs that the plates match.
Okay.
So for example, one of the pitfalls of LPR would be, sometimes the system doesn't always distinguish the difference between a 0 and an O, for example. So it's up to the parking ambassador to verify that the license plate that is in violation is actually the license plate on the vehicle. And if it's not, he or she can go in and manually correct it.
all right, that's what I wanted. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. I think, an hour is reasonable, well, like we originally said, first hour free. And yeah, excellent briefing, and you hit 2 of the things that a lot of people were concerned about. That safe driver thing is very important, because a lot of people are concerned that, we'd be forcing people to leave to pay. And so that absolutely solves that. That's excellent. And also, I like the section there on events, because I've gotten, over the years, several complaints where people have come into town and gotten tickets because they didn't understand our
Yeah.
system, and having that event rate. So I think excellent briefing. You covered all the things I think people were concerned about, so well done.
Thank you. And a part of the parking ambassador job description, if you will, is that on events or on days when there are events and these ambassadors are working, they're not just there waiting to give citations. They're in the garage, they're interacting with people that are parking, they're giving directions, letting them know they're knowledgeable of all the events going on in Aggieville so that they can answer those questions, and reminding people, hey, don't forget to pay, versus standing there like you see on Parking Wars, like, oh, can't wait to get you, that's,
John?
Also, great presentation. You pretty
you.
much covered everything. And I also go with the hour. I think the half hour is just a little too short, and given our staffing these days, lines could be pretty long when you want to pick up that sandwich or cup of coffee. So, thank you.
My pleasure.
Actually, I'm thinking in terms of a donut, and
Yeah,
but the lines can be long, so.
could be, yes.
So I do like, I understand your point, but I like the hour, just to give people a comfort level. And I think it's gonna take a while for people to get used to it, especially if it's different. I mean, I'm used to the K-State parking garage, so this will be different yet. And so I'd rather, but let's see, what was I had a couple of points. Anyway, this is, will be different, new and different for us. And, but I think customer service is important. And I really like the idea of the public not bumping their nose and getting mad and leaving. I want to, there to be a way out, at least in the beginning, until, the thing about Aggieville, we're always going to have those new people coming. It's not like we're training anyone, because it just won't work that way. We'll still have a transient group coming and going. My concern, I want to be sure that the part-time users that are only paying $25, how will an employer, well, we have details to work out, right, at another time?
Yeah, no, one of the
This is about
ideas.
the system.
Yeah, so one of the ideas that I did have regarding the part-time employees
Yeah.
receiving the reduced rate, and that's where my highly skilled office manager will come in, is that they'll be verifying pay stubs showing the amount of hours worked by employees in order to receive that reduced rate. It's the full-time employees that pay every month we're not really worried about. It's the part-time employees and making
So
sure
the-
that.
So the person's gonna have to bring in their pay stub? I don't think there are pay stubs anymore.
Or electronic. I get
Electronic.
an electronic pay stub, but
Yeah, okay.
they just to show how many
Yeah.
hours they've worked over a given period of time.
All
It could be the last
I
2
just
weeks,
don't
the
want us
last
to
30
be
days.
manipulated by,
No.
kindly supervisors or who give wrong information. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, your presentation has been good. Are there other institutions, other cities or higher ed institutions that are airports that already have this same company that we could mentally compare to?
I'm sure. So Rapid City, South Dakota
Okay.
would be one. I believe Dubuque, Iowa is another one.
Okay.
Tyler Kane, who, as I said, is standing by on Zoom, would also be able to answer that question, I think, a little bit better than I could.
Okay. Any place closer?
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Tyler Kane from IPS, if you can hear me. In relation to proximity, geography was never my strong suit, but I can tell you we work with over 300 municipalities, universities, some airports across the country. And we have some similar deployments like Adriana mentioned with Rapid City, South Dakota. We also have a fairly recent deployment of very similar scope, size, and application with the city of Waukegan in Illinois. But we work with municipalities small to large, all the way up to cities like the city of Cincinnati, and they all range in in scope and complexity. But if there are some specific references you're looking for, we can certainly provide some additional ones.
No, I just wondered generally, you know how you like to check references? Or see if someone's been in that community and what was your experience? So it was just a general question. Although I'm sure Adrian has also checked references.
Yes, ma'am.
So, all right, good. All right, well, I think we have, the important thing is that we're gonna cover our costs, so.
Yes, ma'am. That is my intention.
Yeah, I think that's what the commission wants, is that. All right.
Mayor, I would like to hear, I see Dennis Cook here, I don't know if he was going to comment, but I would like to hear from him, as well as RCPD. I don't know their involvement in some of the parking garage or issues regarding citations, so since I see both of them, I would like to hear a little bit of feedback from them, if they have any. If not, that's fine.
And also, the last session, Commissioner Reddy, you had asked if KSU had planned on building another parking garage. I can answer that. The answer is no. Currently, they do not, they lack the geographical space to put a parking garage anywhere without seriously impacting parking on campus. And the department is fully self-funded. They do not accept funds from the university, student fees, or tuition. And especially after COVID, they do not have the funds to build another multi-million-dollar parking garage.
That's helpful information, thank you. Okay, if there are no further questions, I would like to give the public an opportunity. Thank you, Adrian.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yep. Does anyone wish to come forward and speak about the parking garage at K-State? I'm sorry, in Aggieville. Hope you've all had a chance to check it out. I talked to somebody the other day that couldn't figure out how to get in it. You have to go in on 14th Street until the North Manhattan Avenue street is improved. So one way in, one way out. And don't hesitate to call the police when the Mustangs start revving up until we get the actual parking pavement. And public hearing, hello.
Hello.
Director
Interim
Muldrup.
Director Kurt Muldrup.
Muldrup.
And so it didn't come to say anything, but since you requested, make it very short. I think she has covered everything in detail, and we are in full support of this. I think all the minor details and concerns that anyone would have are covered. I think it's a very good solution to the parking problem in Aggieville.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Dennis, yeah? All things Aggieville, Dennis.
All things Aggieville. Good evening, Dennis Cook, Aggieville Director. I would just like to just throw in that we've had numerous meetings with Adrian Tucker, and we feel very good about the relationship that we're building with her, with the city on this, and I think that we're going in the right direction. So I guess the only other thing I would comment on that is I don't think a half hour is enough for free. I'd lean more towards 2 hours, but we can talk about that. Not the response I was hoping for. Okay, well, thank you very much. But I think they're doing a great job, and we appreciate it, and it's going to work out for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Does anyone else wish to speak to us? With that, I'll close the public hearing, or the public comment period. And the purpose of this was to provide city administration with feedback. So we've done that. Is there further commission discussion, or are you ready for a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with the IPS Group Incorporated of San Diego, California for the purpose and installation of license plate recognition, LPR equipment, and parking management software for the Aggieville parking garage.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. With the city clerk, Brenda Wolf, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. And we're looking forward to it all working. No glitches someday. Anyway, the next item on the agenda is to review the Indoor Aquatics Center study, and Jason Hilgers, the Deputy City Manager, will present to us.
Thank you, Mayor. Much like Jared, I'm just going to introduce Tracy Anderson, who's been the lead on this. Many members of the committee are here this evening as well, as in addition, I'm assuming a lot of the 102 additional citizens who are very interested in this and wanted to be on the committee. We kept them informed throughout the process, and we have a website dedicated to the entire effort, but I'll introduce Tracy and he can get started.
In the meantime, I'd be interested in those members of the study committee if you'd stand, please, just so we know you're here. And thank you very much for the hours you've put in this, and the public also. I know you had good attendance at some of your meetings, so thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Pick a microphone.
Yeah, you can't stand in the middle.
I will stand to one
Okay.
side. Real quickly, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for letting us be here to present the findings from the feasibility study. Real quickly, I want to acknowledge George Nice is here with Councilman Hunsacker. They are the aquatic specialists that was a part of our team. And I want to make note, Heather Peterson from our office is here too. She put in a substantial amount of work on this project, and thank you, Heather, for all your efforts. So George and I are going to kind of go back and forth on this presentation. I'm going to start and end, and he'll fill in the middle with some of the more technical aquatics things. So first thing I want to do is just remind everybody that the purpose of the study was to establish site preference, establish capital cost, establish facility concept, and establish operational cost, with an outcome of a recommendation here tonight. And then the next steps would be to, basically in that order, but the very next step would be to develop a funding strategy. So we're not going to talk funding strategies tonight. That is a next step. So we're just going to focus on what the outcome was. A little bit of history to back things up. Some of you may recall in 2006, there was a recreation study done where we would have an all-in-one complex that would have been located in Seco Park, indoor rec, indoor aquatics, and I think even Parks and Rec's offices might have been associated with that facility. That did not pass in 2006. For various reasons, everybody's kind of got their opinion, but it didn't pass. Then in 2014 and 15, the commission hired RDG, and our firm was a part of that study to do a strategic facility improvement plan. And what that study came out with was identified the top 4 community priorities. And then on top of that, in 2017, you all hired Bruce McMillan Architects to do a 2017 facility feasibility study, which is what led to the quarter-cent sales tax that funded, quality of life sales tax that funded the 2 new indoor rec centers at each middle school, trail and connectivity improvements, and field improvements for safety and playability. And some of that work has been completed and some of it's still underway. I think Seco Park, the tennis courts and ball fields and all that are going to be coming soon as being requested for an RFP, maybe sometime this year. I'm not exactly sure, but Jason would be able to answer that question. So we've basically checked the box on 3 of the 4 strategies thus far, and I think everybody in our community is excited about that. But the 4th priority was the development of indoor aquatics, and that one has not been checked off yet. Some information that comes straight from the Strategic Facility Improvement Plan. These statistics up here were a part of a statistically valid survey that was completed as a part of that. And at that time, nearly half of our community said there was a need for indoor swimming spaces. 34% said less than 50% of their needs were being met. 37% said 0% of their needs were being met. And 41% said they would utilize an indoor aquatic facility the most of any facility or program, indoor program space in the community. So, and I'll just sort of skip over this, but the implementation of Priority 4 was to create leisure swimming, swimming lessons, competitive swimming, and water therapy in an indoor aquatic space. So a community indoor aquatic space. Options that were explored in the 2017 study were to enclose the 50-meter pool at City Park. The steering committee at that time decided that was not an appropriate recommendation, and it wouldn't meet the needs of the community. They also looked at enclosing Seco Park, and that committee, same committee, said that's not going to also meet the needs of the community. Their recommendation was a new aquatic facility located at Seco Park, an indoor aquatic facility. However, during the course of that study, it was determined not to explore that further than exactly what that outcome was. So what's changed since 2017? Well, the pandemic, the closing of the K-State Natatorium. So if you'll remember those statistics from that survey of nearly half of our community's need being unmet, I'm going to suggest it's substantially higher than that now, because there's no indoor aquatics in this community now, with the exception of Genesis Health Club's pool. So last fall, or August, I think actually maybe June, you all approved us to do this study. You had 117 applications to be on the steering committee. I'm guessing that might be one of the highest application pools you've ever had, if that doesn't show you the interest that's in this particular project. You whittled that down to 15 members, and I applaud you. You had a very, what I would call, good and diverse group of people on that steering committee, and they were a lot of fun to work with. This is probably one of the most shocking statistics that was discovered, and the author of this, Keith, is here tonight, so maybe he can even elaborate on this later. Where you see Manhattan in that red dot, at the time of this study, Genesis Health Club was not open. And so and the natatorium was closed, and so we did not have access to any indoor aquatics here, or water. So that put us as one of 9 communities of 50,000 residents or more in the country that did not have access to indoor water. We're now considered a yellow dot, so we're one of 22 that has what's called limited access to water, and that being Genesis Health Clubs, and through a private paywall. But again, the author is in this audience, so if you have specific questions about this study, he can answer those later. And I think, according to George, because they're working on it, the one in Buckeye, Arizona might be wiped off of this map because they've recently completed an aquatic center. So now we would be one of 21. It doesn't get better. So I'll let George take over.
All right, good evening. Thanks again for the time this evening. George Dinas with Councilman Hunsaker, and so we do aquatic facility planning and design. We have a long history with Tracy and his firm, as we were the designers at City Park Pool a number of years ago. And my dad grew up in Junction City, so it's always fun to get back to this area. So one of the things that we did, in addition to having the steering committee, was to just have an overall community input process. We already had the survey results, as Tracy mentioned, but we also spent a good portion of a day meeting with various aquatic user groups and stakeholders that included, the school district. It included city staff and leadership, and then it also included just various users from the K-State swim club to the Marlins swim team on the competitive side, and then other leisure and therapy users as well. Met with No Stone Unturned to discuss their needs. And so as we started to look at the community input process, we really came down to 3 separate buckets of users that or needs that we felt are not being met within Manhattan currently. The first was just in general, community wellness. So this is special needs, people with disabilities, healthcare, rehabilitation, a lot of that 60 and older crowd, that water is very helpful for them just because of the mobility assistance that it allows for exercise. And as we start to look at the different aquatic user groups, we start to look at different types of pools that meet their needs. And so specifically with the community wellness, it's usually shallow water. It could be open water area. It could be lap lanes. It is going to be a little bit warmer, probably in that 86 degree range. And then it's also going to have ADA accessibility and possibly a separate environment as well. And so this really, once we heard this feedback, it really drove us to looking at a 2-pool facility so that we could have different water temperatures for the different types of aquatic user groups. So after the community wellness, we also looked at community programs was the other need that we heard was not being met. And this goes just to general fitness and wellness, swim lessons, recreational swimming, birthday parties, special events. This again is going to be probably more shallow, warmer water, but also could have a deep water component to it. And then we also looked at specific recreational amenities. So if you think, portions of City Park pool or Seco pool that are, shallow water, maybe a kid's play area, maybe some open water recreational swim. Just on the indoor side, where we want to be more cost efficient with those spaces. And so it's a little bit of a scaled down version that can be used on a year-round basis. And then lastly, we looked at a combination of recreation and competition. And so, this is going to be, again, fitness swimming. It's going to be, could be adult masters swimming, pools that could support the competitive swim teams for the school districts, for the K-State Swim Club and the Marlins, as I mentioned earlier, that we met with throughout the community input process. And so when we start to look at the different sizes and pools that would accommodate these needs, this is where it drives us to probably a mid-level depth to deeper water pool, lanes, starting at a minimum of 8 lanes, and we explored up to 20 lanes. And this is going to be a little bit cooler water. It's going to be 80 to 82. The purpose of this pool is that people are constantly moving, and so that's where we want a little bit cooler water. And then we would also see the need for spectator seating to be able to host outside high school swim meets, as well as USA swimming meets, and even, masters events. And so, some of the comments that we heard, we talked about, swim lessons, getting filled up very quickly within the city, and that's only a limited time throughout that summer season. We talked with Special Olympics as well, and how they go to Topeka for their state meet, brings 350 to 400 people on an annual basis to that. We heard words like accessible and inclusive for all, and then we also heard go big or go home. So just some thoughts that we heard from the different stakeholders within the community. And so as we started to look at options, this is where we start again with the 2-pool model. We started with the 8-lane pool that you see there on the right hand of the screen. So this is essentially, it's not the minimum for high school USA and NCAA. While it is the minimum, it's not the standard. And so yes, you can have a 6-lane pool that can accommodate those purposes, but 8-lane is really the new minimum for high school, NCAA, and USA swimming, just because it allows for 25% greater capacity when you're doing the lap swimming, competitive swimming, fitness swimming. And we know from just experience that lap swimmers a lot of times don't like to share lanes. And so to have 2 extra lanes is very helpful. On the leisure pool side, we're showing a variety of spaces. We're showing some warm water lap lanes that can also focus on swim lessons, as well as warm water lap swim, water fitness classes. We have a current channel, which is a recreational and a wellness amenity. And then we also have a children's area. And then we have the normal support spaces that you would expect to see, locker rooms, offices, pool mechanical storage, and even a birthday party room. The one thing that we talked about a lot is just the capacity that the KSU natatorium had, and trying to ensure that, we would have adequate capacity for swim lessons and water fitness classes. And so, for instance, the 3-lane warm water lap pool, at any given time, that pool could have upwards of 24 to even upwards to 30 swim lesson participants in it if you have 4 to 5 at each end of the pool, and then they're swimming, about halfway down, as well as some of the open water area behind the zero depth entry portion. We could stage some of the younger swimmers there, and so it was very critical to us to make sure that we had the spaces included to be able to accommodate swim lessons for the community. Some example, programmatic pictures. This is a typical 8-lane, 25-yard lap pool. Here's an example of what that children's area could be. So again, thinking city park, but just on a smaller scale and indoors. The second option, we looked at essentially the next step up from an 8-lane pool, which is typically, in that 10 to 14 lane pool. And so we call this a stretch pool. So it has you'll see a bulkhead right here, which is a fiberglass divider for the pool. And so you can have, 14 lanes that run cross course up and down, or you can have 8 lanes, going east to west, and then you can have the ability to do diving at the same time. You can also move this bulkhead down so you can have an all-deep competition course. And one of the other things this allows is if you move the bulkhead down here, you can have, high school and swim team practice on one side of the bulkhead, but still have the ability to have community use on the other. And so that's the one thing that the 8-lane pool does not really allow. If there's a swim team in the 8-lane pool, 100% of that pool is going to be taken up with, 24 to 40 swimmers at any given time. Whereas the 14-lane pool, you can have 40 swimmers on one side of the bulkhead and still have adequate capacity for the community on the other side. And so that was one of the things that the committee really stressed, was the ability to have multi-purpose, multi-use, and not shut the facility down to the community at various times of the day, because there is a swim team using that facility. And so here's an example of what that 14-lane pool could look like. And so you can see the bulkhead here with the starting blocks. You have cross course, and you can see just the number of swimmers, that pool can, accommodate during a swim practice, and still have another 3 to 4 lanes available for the community during those peak hours. And then here's an example of what the shallow warm water pool could look like. Just another picture. You have 3 lap lanes. You have some shallow water area. This one even has a little deep area right here, but you see some, water walkers in this warmer water pool. And so then the next step up was to look at, what would it look like to have a Olympic-sized pool, 50 meter by 25 yard, that would allow, anywhere from 18 to 22 cross-course lanes, but also the ability to have long course swimming during the long course season. So essentially think the existing outdoor lap pool at City Park Pool would be this pool, but it would be just a tad longer, because we would want to accommodate bulkheads so we could rearrange the pool in those different configurations for both short course and long course. And so here's an example picture of what that could look like with the 2 divider bulkheads. You can have simultaneous swimming and diving. You can do 2 swim meets at once. Again, you have adequate capacity for not only competitive swimming, but recreational and wellness swimming at the same time. And so you're really not limited by the hours of operation and peak times with the number of swimmers you can accommodate, because you have adequate capacity. And then here's an example of what that current channel could look like. This is a facility that we designed in Virginia Beach, and I got there at 6 a.m. for morning lap swim, and there was a crowd of people waiting to get into the current channel to walk against the current at 6 in the morning. And so that really has, both a wellness, fitness, therapeutic purpose, as well as a recreational purpose. We've also, allowed for as I mentioned, the other support areas within the facility. So administration, locker rooms, ingress, egress to the pool area, and spectator seating, which is, looking at probably a minimum of 250 to, if you go with the 50-meter pool, you'd probably want, 750 to 1,000, because if you have a pool that size, you can really accommodate larger meets and, bring in statewide and regional events that can, bring out-of-town visitors to Manhattan. And so when we looked at a day in the life of the pool, again, we have those two separate bodies of water for two separate purposes, both the warm water, the cool water. And so you can see, starting as early as 5:30 in the morning, going till 8:30 at night, and just the different activities that can take place. Some of the activities, as I mentioned, can take place in both of the pools, like lap swim. You can have shallow water aerobics on one side of the facility and deep water aerobics on the other side of the facility, and then also, pepper in, recreational swimming, swim lessons, and outside user groups as well. And so, in conclusion, to give an idea of, 8-lane, 14-lane, 50-meter, which is the 18 to 22 lane, we had projected an expense budget anywhere from $1 million to about $1.5 million. On an annual basis, with a cost recovery range around the 50% mark. We typically find, as you all know, that's the current standard for the outdoor facilities here in Manhattan, is about a 50% cost recovery rate. But across the country, indoor aquatics, it is a subsidized endeavor in most communities, if not all. There are very few that we have found and are working in all 50 states that would even get to an 80% cost recovery rate. And so by the time we accounted for memberships, programs, lane rentals, swim meets, we arrived at roughly about a 50% cost recovery rate, with the 50-meter pool just a tad below that. And so we also had a range of construction cost numbers for the different facilities. And so I'll let Tracy, as we go through the sites, I'll let Tracy speak to the sites and the construction cost numbers as well.
Okay, so I hope you all are taking that as a sign that somebody wants you to really pay close attention to this. So in 2006, to reference that study again, there were 20 sites that were looked at for location of that center that was being proposed back then. And so as we got into the sites discussion, we kind of went back, looked at that study, and tried to decide, which of those might be the most appropriate to look at again. And in the 2006 study, the 4 sites that kind of fell out from the 20 were Seco Park, City Park, Griffith Park, and a site downtown. I believe the site downtown has now been since developed, and I could never find exactly where to pinpoint where they were looking at for that particular site, but and some of the characteristics you're seeing there are what they looked at when they dove deeper into those 4 sites. And this is just a map. This is an image straight from that study that shows the 20 sites on the left and then the 4 sites on the right that had a deeper dive into them. And then ultimately, the commission at that point in time decided Seco Park was the appropriate site for that center, which is why I think it went a step further in that regard. So we decided to look at, what are some sites that, one, are currently incorporated into the city's set of venues or parks, so that we're not looking at trying to acquire property. And so the 4 sites that we kind of landed on and presented to the committee were Northeast Community Park, Griffith Park, City Park, and Seco Park. And before I forget, I want to go back because as George was showing you those 3 different options for the center, or for the aquatic center floor plan, and those are conceptual, obviously, at this stage. One of the committee members brought up at a meeting that the only thing that's changing is that competitive pool component. And the reason for that is there's really only a few options you can do with that. And that's more or less those three that we've shown. The leisure side has infinite possibilities. And so we could have spent hours and hours and hours showing 100 different ways that could be configured. We thought it was easiest just to show it one way. George, in a subsequent meeting, brought multiple images of different layouts of that to sort of appease that question. So, but all of these sites we looked at, there's it's hard to see on the City Park one, but a 5-minute drive time, a 10-minute drive time, and a 15-minute drive time circle, if you want to call it that, around each location. And ultimately what we sort of discovered was any one of those sites seemed like it had a good household and population dynamic within that 5 to 15-minute range. There was nothing here that was way out of whack. I mean, Northeast is the lowest because when you go east in that range from Northeast Community Park, there's just nothing but ag land, basically. So that was a part of it. So our first stab at sites, we looked at Northeast Community Park, and we sort of went through some of the pros and cons. Again, existing city property, it definitely has the capacity from a site standpoint. And there's existing infrastructure there that we could tap into. Some of the cons were that this is in a flood hazard area that's unprotected by the levee. The water table varies greatly there with the river and the outflow of Tuttle Creek. From a visibility standpoint, it's kind of tucked away. You're not going to see it on just a regular everyday drive, whether that's important or not, but that was one of the categories from the 2006 study. It would increase traffic on Allen Road and Casement, but I think there's already plans in the works for upgrading Casement anyway, so I don't know that that's necessarily a con. And with almost all of them, you're going to reduce some green space. So. Next, we looked at Griffith Park, and this is a joint city and school district property. It does have capacity. There is infrastructure there. It would be highly visible in the community and very accessible. And then site considerations, it's right next to the railroad. Is that the greatest place for an indoor aquatic center? I don't know. It does reduce green space in that park, as you can well see. And it is in also flood hazard area, but it's protected flood hazard area. City Park, literally just right across the street and a little bit to the west from where we're standing right now is where we originally looked at it, thinking that we could take advantage of the existing pool and parking lot and just expand that parking capacity and place the building there. Again, existing city property, it has the capacity, it has the infrastructure, and it has visibility. City Park is partially in flood hazard area, but it's protected. City Park was not supported by previous studies, and it definitely reduces green space in City Park.
What does it mean not supported? Just they didn't mention it?
No, previous steering
Recommended
committees
against it.
had shot down putting a large
Okay. Building in City Park. Okay, thank
exactly.
you.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Seco Park, and we'll get into some more dynamics of this particular site, but essentially this, just to give you a little orientation, there's the stadium right here to the top of the screen. This body of water here is what would be that upper pool.
Tracy, you're in the middle of the microphones again, so that you
I'm
wouldn't
sorry.
broadcast and people
Okay,
can't.
I'm going to stand at this one for a
One side or
second.
the other. Move the microphones.
This pool right here is that upper level pool at Seco Park. It is not the 8-lane pool with the diving well at the bottom. We're showing that being taken out, or we did, at least in this particular study, with the new aquatic center going adjacent to it, thinking that, this is the newest part of that. Could we somehow reappropriate it and keep it there as a part of a new facility? So again, the pros are this is existing city, county, USD 383 property in Seco Park, site capacity, existing infrastructure. It's already an existing destination, and possible reuse of some of the outdoor elements, and it pretty much maintains green space, and in this instance we'd actually add some back in because the building is in where the gravel, partially where part of that gravel parking lot is. So that's a con. It reduces some of the existing parking capacity, if you want to call that lot organized on any given night. And it replaces an existing outdoor pool. So once we presented these, the committee asked us to please remove Griffith Park. They felt like that one was, while a good potential location, they felt like just the safety concerns of Fort Riley Boulevard and that intersection, and potentially pedestrians and cyclists trying to access it, that there just could be safety concerns with that. And it does almost eliminate the use of Griffith Park. And so they just felt like taking that out of the city's bag of parks just was not a good option. The next round of studies we did removed Griffith Park, so you won't see that one again. So it basically got pinned down to Northeast Community Park, City Park, and Seco Park, and we just took a little deeper dive into each of those. And one of the things we did is our Ben Flowers, who's no longer with McCown Gordon but was at the time, did a pretty deep dive into what the site construction cost at each of these locations was, because they each have different issues that they need to deal with. So we looked at Northeast Community Park, looked at the original master plan from 2000, and at the top, it's showing that there was a couple of practice soccer fields there. It even shows, the things that are there today are this playground, the trail that goes around the park, these two ball fields, and this shelter right here are all that's there today based off of this master plan. This maintenance building is there too.
There's another shelter at the east end of the parking.
Oh yeah, this shelter right here is there
And both
as
of the
well.
soccer, but they aren't permanent soccer,
They're
grass.
just sort of
They move the goals.
inference soccer fields, yes. This is a big flat area where they do practice soccer. But this amenity here is not there, which I think was meant to be some sort of outdoor amphitheater type or interpretive center or something. That's not there. And when we were looking at this site, really the best possible location is where this flat area is up here. It's adjacent to the road, it's adjacent to the services, and it's really like the highest part in that park. So that's why we explored that area a little more, and assumed that it might be feasible just to relocate those soccer fields onto the other side. So we looked at, and I should mention that in each one of these, we've actually placed the largest facility that George showed you, just because we wanted to know if that's the direction it went, that it would actually fit in any of the locations that we're showing you. So that facility would be here. You would still have this entrance. The parking that's there is here, this one lane with double-sided, thank you. And then this would be the additional parking we would add, and we would most likely be required, just for fire access alone, a drive back out to Oh my gosh, is this Allen?
Knox Lane.
Knox Lane, thank you. Knox Lane Extension, yes, thank you. Which we would most likely extend Knox Lane's paving at least down to this exit/entrance. So that's that one, in a little deeper dive.
I would also say that Knox Lane is a gravel road, and in really dry weather, you'll just get a mouthful of dust if you're that close to Knox Lane.
It's gravel starting right here, right now.
Exactly.
And like I said, we would have to at least, and yeah, I agree, there's a lot of dust kicked up when cars, but it's
Yeah.
not that highly
That's
trafficked.
one of the cons, I suppose,
Yeah, potentially. So this is the current city park master plan, or at least the one from 2018. And when we had shown it in this location, we were obviously taking out one, I think it's Bakerfield,
Right,
that's in this
Jesse
location, which that didn't go over well with the committee. And we also discovered later that there is a potential infrastructure project that may need to happen through there, that putting a building there would obviously not allow anything like that to happen in the future. And so we looked at where other areas that we could potentially place this in City Park. And we came up with this zone right here, because it wouldn't impact any of the 3 existing fields. The only thing it would impact is this future basketball court, which I think we showed replacing it over here in the image you're about to see. So yeah, this is the first image, so the underlay of the park, the whole park, and then a blow up. So we would say, let's relocate that future basketball court over here. We could organize the parking a little better and place the building right here. So that was one option for City Park. And then we found out that Wilson Field is actually not used for the size that it necessarily is, and it could be reduced in size to match the other 2 fields that are there without affecting any of the current programming that the Parks Department does. And so we thought, well, maybe that opens up an opportunity to place it along Fremont and possibly expand some parking on this side and expand parking in front of the pavilion. So those were the 2 options at City Park. Again, the committee was not real keen on placing a large structure in City Park. The potential downside to it over in this location is, this row of houses along here are some of our really nice houses along the park edge, and I'm not sure any of those residents would appreciate looking out and seeing that big building there. We thought up here, maybe since there's a fraternity and apartment buildings, maybe it wouldn't be as obtrusive. But again, the committee kind of, City Park would be a last resort for a location, in their opinion. The next location was over to Seco, and we sort of took 2 stabs at this one as well. And I'm going to, again, this one's just for overall reference, but if we blow that up, based on the previous one of, if we tried to salvage this upper pool, well, could we not maybe salvage both pools and wrap the building around that current pool deck? The existing structure that's there is not able to be winterized. We've looked at that a couple of times actually, and it would just be extremely costly, and it still would not be very usable in the winter. So we would be suggesting that that existing building come down. Maybe we can salvage where the existing mechanical room is that houses all the pumps and stuff and incorporate that into a new facility. But wrapping that building around these 2 and maintaining those so that that neighborhood keeps their outdoor pool was the thought on this one. And it obviously still is primarily in the gravel parking area. The next option basically just places it right next to the pool that's there, and as a freestanding building, just sort of as George has presented earlier. But again, the sentiment was, could we preserve those 2 existing pools as an outdoor amenity where you could walk out some doors or something and and get to those. So I think those are the list of options, or sites. Looking at a cost breakdown for each of the sites, Northeast Community Park came in at about 2.75, and the reason that one is substantial is if you look at this earthwork number, to build there, we would have to raise the building pad 3 feet. So that's a lot of import to bring in, and that's to get it out of the flood zone hazard map, or out of that flood zone hazard area, just from the ability to even build something there. Option A in City Park was, option A and option B were real close to each other, and there was not a huge distinguishing factor between those, but one had a little bit more site grading or a little lower level that we'd have to bring in. I think a little bit more, one of them had more paving and parking area associated with it. Seco Park option A, which was wrapping around the existing pool, was about 1.8, and option B was about 2.0. And the reason that is you're actually, if you stretch the building out next to the pool, you're actually digging into the side of the hill if you want to marry that up with the existing upper level pool deck. Sorry. So that parking lot is graded and rises from the east side to the west side. And so you would be digging into that a little bit. So there's a little bit more retaining wall sort of component to that option B. So in the end, the steering committee recommendation was that Seco Park option A was their preferred site. However, they said Northeast Community Park would also be an acceptable location. Again, they were not real keen on a building of that size being across the street in City Park. The committee also felt like either one of these options would be an acceptable option to meet the needs, current and future needs of the community. The leisure stretch 25 or the leisure 50 meter by 25 yard. Just a quick summary here is, the area is about 45,000 square feet for this facility with a projected cost. Again, the variability there is the site, and that's built into these two numbers. So at Seco Park option A, you'd be at 27.2. At Northeast Community Park, you'd be around 28.8. For the larger facility, 56,000 square feet of area and a cost of about 33.8 to 35.5, depending on location. So that was where those numbers came in. Now I should stress, and I'm sure you've heard this lately on about everything, every project you have going on, those numbers were developed about 4 or 5 months ago. Those numbers are not today's numbers, I can guarantee it. So numbers are changing daily. So just to end up the presentation, just some renderings of what a space, what it could look like inside the leisure pool area, what it could look like inside the competition pool area, and then possibly what a building could look like. And again, these are just extremely conceptual, just to give you something to consider. And with that, do you have any questions for George or I?
So I was thinking back from 2006, that the 25-yard, 25-meter pool, that's kind of, is that what length most swimming competitions happen in? Or is most of them in a 50-meter pool?
So the long course necessitates, the summer season, what you see in the Olympics, necessitates the 50-meter by 25-yard pool. But roughly, according to USA Swimming, about 85 to 86% of swim meets are swam in the short course configuration, so 25 yards. That it might be an 8-lane pool, it could be a 10-lane, it could be 14-lane, but typically a race course is going to be 8-lane, 25 yards. That 8-lane might be part of a bigger pool, but it would encompass the 8-lane, 25-yard. But that's going to make up, over 80% of all competitive events.
Okay, so that would not be a strike against us, just having a 25-yard indoor pool for high school swim meets and stuff.
Correct, that is right.
All right. So are you guys the ones that designed the city park pool and such back then?
Correct, yes, our team designed that.
Okay, so how could we design this one that doesn't require 20 lifeguards every minute of the day? Because that became a huge issue with all the different, splash things and everything like that. So that's one of the concerns, is the ongoing, how many lifeguards are you guys sort of envisioning something like, let's say the 25 stretch? Or you think, is that something that 3 or 4 lifeguards could potentially watch the whole place at a time, or is this another one of those 8 to 10 every minute of the day lifeguards are required?
Yeah, it would vary on the time of day, the type of activity that is ongoing, but with the leisure pool, that's going to be probably, during the morning hours when it's just water walkers and lap swim, it's going to be 1 lifeguard up, 1 lifeguard down, maybe 2 if you have the current channel open. On the competition pool side, you'd probably have 1 in the deep, 1 in the shallow, and then 1 to rotate through. So, we probably see 5 to 6 lifeguards at any given time, and maybe on the weekends, Saturday, Sunday afternoons when the leisure pool is going to be a lot busier, you'd have a couple of extra staff members in. But yeah, we try to be as efficient as possible to keep the operational numbers down.
So I've never been up to the Genesis pool. Is that just a 25-meter pool also there?
It's 25-yard pool, 6-lane, 25-yard pool.
Okay. And so I've always been curious as to how places like that can build something somewhat, like they probably didn't spend $3 million on that pool at the most. And here we are always looking, when the city does something, it's quantum leaps of expense more than what the public sector would ever deal is. Do they have lifeguards at Genesis? It's everything, you're on your own all the time. And they don't have splash areas, do they? It's all they got is a pool to swim in.
Yep.
Yeah, and so the cost always goes up when you have to add all the other stuff in and then provide for safety, because people aren't going to show up and sign away their life.
They have cameras in there that are monitored at the front desk. But if I cramped up in the middle of the pool, would somebody get there in time? I don't know.
Yeah, the cameras are probably to stop foolishness more so than monitor for lifeguards.
But it's swim at your own risk, basically, so.
Okay. All right, very good.
So I have a few questions, and I'll wait for public comment, and then I'll probably ask the others. I saw the steering committee, but it's hard for me to figure out the organizations they're affiliated with. So I just wanted to know if you had somebody on the steering committee from USD 383 and Kansas State University and from Riley County.
You all selected the steering committee.
Okay, I just don't remember their affiliations. I thought you might have built a relationship. Now all of you know where all of you are from.
Linda.
We met with all of those 3 groups during the stakeholder meetings.
Okay, that's important. Yeah, that's
Right.
good. That's
I don't believe anybody from K-State was on the committee. I don't believe anybody from USD 383 was. Oh, Jardine was, yes. Jardine Coleman was.
We did have Linda Cook
Linda
come to
Cook.
several of the meetings early.
She was on the steering committee.
Linda-
Linda Cook. Linda
Yeah,
Cook.
Lin-
I'm sorry,
Linda
Linda
Cook
Tina was
wasn't.
on it.
And then
Linda Cook came to several.
we did have some high school swim coach, and we did invite the athletic director, but
Okay.
they did not come. I don't believe anyone from Riley County
Okay.
was on or attended,
I
but we
don't
did have reps from the other 2 on occasion.
Right. The reason I ask is because they are key stakeholders as far as funding this program, this process, and I think it's very critical that we build those partnerships. I know that Kansas State University doesn't have a swim team per se, but when they had an auditorium, it was used quite a bit. That's where my kids learned how to swim. That's where I took water aerobics, and it was just a lot, it was always busy. And so I feel like we need to look at those partnerships and have them be very involved in this project. I do feel it is something our community could use in their own pockets. USD 383, Marlin swim teams, you can see that happening. Riley County will have lots of residents coming and going, using it for physical therapy and all types of other activities. And Kansas State University, if they would be, when we have those conversations, to look at, maybe we can put this into their user privilege fees if they can want to access it as students and faculty, because they don't have anything with the rec center, and I don't see that in the foreseeable future of them opening up a pool for on campus. So this would be utilized by all of them, and I think it would be utilized much like the rec center is now, from 5:30 to 10:30, whenever they feel, and if they want to have those classes and things like that. I see there's lots of, I'm actually very happy that there was 117 people that applied. I know there's always been a conversation for indoor pools, and I know the need for it, and the reasons for having it in our community. It's always been the cost that's kind of held us back. So I think there's good conversations to be had. I think for the site and construction and operational costs, so I've see them individually, the site cost and the construction cost and the operational cost. I think it would be good to see all together, if that's how we move forward, so we have a holistic picture. Commissioner Haddasaw brought up lifeguards. When we talk about 5 or 6 lifeguards, I'm assuming it'll be 20 lifeguards, because they're not going to work all of them at the same time, so we're going to need that. And that might be more doable than it is in the summertime.
Yep.
So sorry, Tracy. Go ahead.
Well, there's, in the actual feasibility study document, there are full pagers that have all of that combined.
Oh, okay, I have these, so maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So building site is all tallied down to
So all of that
one
is the
with a range, again, depending on site, along with the operational costs next to it.
Yeah.
So,
This has been very helpful, actually. I do want to know, how long were the lanes at the auditorium?
they were 25 yards
25 yards, okay.
in both the 8-lane and the 6-lane.
So how many lanes did they have?
They had 14 lanes total, because
Okay.
the colder water pool was an 8-lane pool, and the warmer water pool was a 6-lane.
And driving,
Yeah, it had a diving well, but
okay. And of course, maintenance for indoor pools is different. Okay, that's good information to have. Thank you, and I look forward to the comments to hear from the public as well. Thanks.
I just want to ask one question. I've gotten several notes on this. When the original City Park pool was built, they supposedly put foundations in there to allow that where the diving area is to be covered. And a couple people sent me things where they had, covers that you could open in the summer and close. And is that feasible at all?
so the key word there is supposedly. The answer to that is those foundations were not installed. So can it be done and covered? Yes, but you would tear up. And Bruce's study, his 2017 study, looked at that and the expenses, and those numbers are in that study, and I don't recall them off the top of my head. But again, it was, at that time, that committee said we would not want to see that big structure over that pool in City Park.
Yeah, but when they did that, that was gonna be a permanent, like a rectangular box, and what people are thinking about is some kind of a curved dome that could retract.
Yeah, those things all, but again, does covering the 50-meter pool, and I think that's also a part of the committee's recommendation, is just covering that 50-meter pool with some sort of sprung structure or something like that, does that really meet the community's need for year-round water? And I think the overall sentiment is it does not, because you don't have those zero entry things, you don't have that warmer water. And I can't recall, Sydney will know, is that water heated? But is the 50-meter? The 50-meter pool is not even heated. So in the winter, there'd be a lot of retrofit work, and George can probably, to make that a heated year-round pool.
Yeah, I was just curious, because when people throw that out, they're gonna wanna know, okay, so we weren't given the correct information on the building of the first pool, because everybody assumed, and even Kurt Loop sent me an email, he was the park director then.
Yeah.
He said, oh, that was put in there, so he's still under the impression that it
It
can be
was-
done. And what I'd like to be able to do is say, okay, those of you that think this is an option, here's what it will cost.
Yeah.
It'll be more than this, and here's why it can't be done, because I just don't have the data, and it wasn't in this study. I was a little bit disappointed that that wasn't covered a little bit better.
Okay. We can probably round that up and get it to you. We did, however, look at what if we covered all of City Park Pool? And those dollars came back in the 30-some million range, and decided if you're going to do that, plus the building that's there now, we'd have to still build another winterizable building, because the one that's there is not winterizable. So we kind of let that one go at that point in time when those numbers came back. And just to address the question about, there was discussion at the time of that project about should we separate this body of water, thinking that maybe someday it would be covered. And yes, those discussions absolutely did happen, but none of the infrastructure was realized because, again, we were fighting budget and all of those other things that come along. And everybody wanted everything in that pool. So.
John? No. I think you've given us a lot to think about, and given us the options and the benefit of the committee's work. For me, the biggest issue is the cost and how to fund it. Because I think it is a need here in the community. I know people want it. We've heard from friends, family, and citizens. And it's been, we've known that for a long time even. It's not just something recent. It's just a matter of how can we accomplish it financially. And so, Jason, do you have any thoughts at all?
Yeah, there are several pages in Tracy's document that highlight this discussion because the committee had the same questions.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of ways we could approach it financially, some of which we shared on the radio today. But, you know, a sales tax question for the community to react to is an option. Mm-hmm. There are partnerships and potential collaboration we could have with the school district. I know they're knee-deep in a very large bond issue with multiple sites and multiple projects, and the capacity that they have right now just doesn't stretch as far as getting into this conversation at this time, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't have that in the future. A sales tax, you know, the 0.25 generates about $2.75 million a year. So with a price tag between 27 and 35 million roughly, you're going to need about 40 to 45 million in order to debt service a project like this. And that's different than how we approach the middle school rec centers and the SECO renovation. That was a sales tax that was more of a pay-as-you-go. We didn't pay any interest on any debt, and we don't plan to. This type of project, that would be difficult to do. You'd pass a sales tax and wait 7 years to construct the improvement under that scenario. You know, the timing of the question is something we also acknowledged. You've got a presidential election coming up in 24. Is that the appropriate time? You have a governor race this year. You're talking about large turnouts where the community could actually voice their opinion on whether to do this or not. Those are the two elections that we talked about. If 24 is not a viable year, then you're really talking, you know, either 26 or 28. The current 0.25 goes through 2027. Doesn't mean you can't ask to renew something like that or renew with addition early, knowing you're going to retire that in 27, which would then allow you to start designing and be able to start construction soon after the tax rotates to the new question. There are a lot of different scenarios, clearly, and sales tax doesn't have to be the only source of revenue. If you get into the school district and we talk about a broader tax base supporting this, mill levy could be part of that question, which would go well beyond the city limits of Manhattan and would go to the boundaries potentially of even where the school district's involved. The school district has to approach us if they want to do a sales tax, which we've done in the past. We've done some technology upgrades with USD 383. It was a 5-year tax, but we only ran it for 3 because they said they had enough money after 3 years. So we sunset that early. But again, there are just a variety of ways you could package this if both entities wanted to approach that topic and do a joint venture. I think ultimately you're going to be looking back to the citizens for a vote, if you can even agree to put it on a ballot. And that's really where the first step is. What is the question? How much is it for? Where's it at? And when are you going to ask it? And those are really the things we need to determine as we move forward, if this project meets the needs and fulfills where you all feel like it should be enough to reach a question on a ballot.
But you're saying more or less if it's a kind of a sales tax thing, this thing is still 3 to 4 years out, 5 years out from getting started.
It doesn't have to be. I lay that out as a 0.25 that'll expire, in the next 5 years. You could add on top of it and go additional sales tax that would, take a 10-year life. You have that capacity. It's just, we've always had this sensitivity in this community to a 10% sales tax rate. And, right now we're at 8.95 for the majority of the community, 9.45 in our TDD and CID districts, and 9.75 at the mall. So you start adding additional sales tax, you're going to start bumping some of those closer to that 10 range.
But a quarter cent ain't going to cut it to finance it.
Correct. The 0.25 would only generate 2.75 a year for 10 years, 27.5 million. And that's not going to debt service this type of project.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentations, both of you. Sure. And I'd like to move on to the public comment period. Because there are so many people here. Public comment will begin with people who signed up, and no one signed up, was the information I had. When you do come forward, please be sure to sign in on the list located at the podium. Each speaker should state their name and residential address for the record and for audience members. Each speaker has a maximum of 5 minutes and must stop speaking when the timer sounds. We want to hear your comments on this item before we vote. But generally, neither the commissioners nor the city staff will answer questions or debate an issue. I think we're reviewing tonight. I don't think we're not voting. That's what the text said, just to clarify. Okay. Would you like to come forward? Betty Banner, going to be first. She can go home.
Yes, Betty Banner, 618 Osage Street, Manhattan, Kansas.
Hi, Betty.
And as you saw, I am also a member of the Citizens Aquatic Center
Yes.
Committee. And, I know, and our committee knows, that this is a big project and a very expensive one. But I would say to you that the citizens of this community have been asking for an aquatic facility for many years. I think I was 40 years old when I went to the first discussions of a bond issue, and I'm well past that now. But another thing that I'd really like to emphasize to you is, particularly as we look at building healthy communities, this is an essential part of a healthy community. I believe that were there to be a facility here, people who have not had experience with water, who needed water exercise, would be a new element of the community we would serve. This facility would serve people from birth to 105. You all know that when you age, you need to take care of your body. Arthritis, Parkinson's disease, other kinds of aging diseases that require people to continue to be active in order to stay healthy are important. And a lot of people with those health issues cannot use dry ground exercise because it's not safe for them. It's not safe for them to try and stretch or to do whatever kinds of things that they might do. Whereas water exercise is a fine possibility for many people who they can use the water, they can use small movements, and continue to have some mobility that brings not only quality of life, but brings us healthy citizens. So there are numerous reasons to begin to really look hard at the issue of building a facility that will serve every age element of this community in a productive, healthy manner. So I really want to encourage you to think long and hard about how we can put the money together to build this kind of facility. And furthermore, we could become a center for a larger area, bringing people in. I heard recently that it's really hard for the fire department and those facilities to do water rescue, but they don't have any place to train. We could train them, you know. So those are some of my thinking. And Mr. Hoddesall, I'd just like to address your question about lifeguards. Yes, we've had lots of trouble with lifeguards in the summer. But when you have a facility that is a year-round facility that's open every day, the people who are working there have a real job. It's not a seasonal job. It's something they do as their career. So your issue of staffing is quite different with a year-round facility. Thank you all for supporting the commission, and I hope you will continue to go forward and continue to consider how we can move forward on this project. Thanks.
Thank you, Betty. Please, if you'd like to come forward to the podium. Hello, welcome. Hi.
Hi, my name's Carla Johnson, and I've had bronchitis, so I apologize. I don't sound very good. I live at 415 Walters Drive, apartment 510, and I have been on the committee also, and I started swimming when I was 9 months old because my dad managed the swimming pool in Chapman, and I started teaching swim lessons when I was 12. I have taught 6-month-old up to, I want to say the oldest adult I taught was probably close to 70. I've taught water aerobics classes, shallow water, deep water. I just love it. I'm also a disabled veteran, and like the land exercises Betty was talking about, I'm not able to do those. I have to exercise in the water. And I mean, the point I want to bring up, let's do this now. The longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. If we look back at those other studies and compare prices, I mean, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and cost more and more. And, you know, Betty's point about the fireman training, we don't have any place to train lifeguards right now. Because Genesis Pool, I work there also, it's 5 foot deep. You can't pretend to go down to the bottom and pull somebody up if you can stand on the bottom of the pool. Right now, that's not really feasible anyway. But I don't know. That's all I have to say, I guess. Let me finish writing my name. So thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Is anyone else? Please just come forward. You're welcome to.
Hi, I'm Abby Clark. I live at 132 E.J. Frick Drive. I work for the Geary County School District for the Early Childhood Program. And what I have found is that social media is huge in the military families. They are talking to each other prior to moves, prior to even considering moves, and they're scoping out where do they want to live, where do they want to go. And they talk about, I've heard a lot of families talk about, well, gosh, what are we even supposed to do at Fort Riley? Like, oh my God, I'm going to be deployed to Fort Riley. Or I think having an aquatic center in this area is going to spread. News of this is going to spread among the families. And so when they are being told they're going to have to come to Fort Riley, and they have to consider, do we try and get housing on post? Do we live in Junction City? Do we live in Manhattan? Do we live in a large, a further community? This could be a pull. They've got children. They're going to want to have things to do with those kids. So I feel like that puts us in a better standing with these families that come to us not out of necessarily their own will, but then they have families that they're trying to support. And I really feel like that this would put us at an advantage.
So Junction City doesn't have a pool either?
They have a YMCA.
Why? Okay.
But I think that this would, from what I'm hearing, this would be far superior. And they would probably choose to move here versus Junction City if they could see the difference between the two facilities.
I just figured you'd know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I have been on post when one of the military wives said that, she'd been bringing her children over to Manhattan for swimming lessons all summer. And so, hello.
Hello.
Brian. Yes.
It's great to see you all again. I'm Brian McFarlane. I live at 213 Parker Drive. I would like to just acknowledge that this is a huge amount of money. Anywhere this pool goes, anywhere, even if it's just retrofitting the pool in City Park, it's a ton of money. What I would ask you to consider is putting it on the ballot and allowing the citizens of this city to just make their voices be known. One way or the other, they're going to make the call. It removes it from your shoulders as quickly as possible and places it on the citizens of this community. But I would also ask you to seriously consider, I know that the cost was more money to place this out in Northeast Park, but considering that that's connected to the linear trail, which connects all citizens in a number of different ways, it also would be a huge economic driving force in that community to where you would get people who potentially don't have transportation operations to get to other parts of the city that would be very interested in having full-time work on that end of town. I think it would draw a lot more people that way. It could also help with property values in that sort of area and help that section of the city out a little bit more. It's not that much more of a drive for anyone in the city, and those people who could least afford to make the transportation movement out to an all year-round pool are living in that community anyway. So I just ask you to consider those sort of thought processes before making a final decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Keith Birnbaum. I live at 1114 Fremont Street, apartment 5. I am the assistant swim coach at Manhattan High, and I'm also the president of the swim and dive club at Kansas State University. So I've been around aquatics in Manhattan for a good bit now. I just want to briefly tell you about a little bit about my background and history with swimming, because I think it illustrates this problem pretty well. So in high school, I'll admit, I apologize for using this word, but I was a bit of a loser. I didn't do a lot of things. I went to school cruised through school, went home, played video games for 8 hours, went to sleep, did it all over again. I didn't do a lot of things. And one day I made the impulsive decision to join the swim club at Olathe North High School. And ever since then, my life has just completely changed. I have a new outlook on life. I see the value in being around other people. I'm not as introverted as I was. I'm not a recluse playing video games in my room until 2 a.m. Now that I'm the Manhattan High assistant swim coach, I've gotten to see all these swimmers grow within themselves and develop some of these abilities that I was able to develop. Not only just the health benefits of their bodies becoming more capable of different things, but also the mental and social aspects of it. All of our kids I've seen over the 3 years have just grown as humans, not even really athletes or anything related to that sort. So I think that intangible is really important and should be considered throughout this. And another intangible that I think is important is the statistics that were brought up earlier. I was the one who did that research. I did it in the geography department with Dr. Jeffrey Smith, and it was really fun to do research. And through that, I think those numbers really paint the picture by themselves. Those 97% of cities with a population of 50,000 people or more have access to such a facility. Maybe a little more honest stat would be 93% of cities within the population range of 50,000 to 60,000 have such a facility. So I think that continues to just say, this is something that is expected in a community of our size. And I love Manhattan. If I have the choice, I want to be here for the rest of my life. But I can't justify that without year-round pool or year-round water. It's just not something that I could compromise on, and I feel like there's a lot of other people that cannot compromise on that as well. So I really hope that you guys can see this as a general improvement of life and quality of life improvement. That can't always be measured with numbers and things like that. Do you have any questions regarding the research or study I did? I don't know if you can ask me questions on how this works.
We can, but I think they've explained the numbers pretty well, and I appreciate you doing that. That was, I bet you enjoyed really digging in. But I think that helped make the point that a community our size needs one.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you, Keith. John?
I'm Joe Knopp. I live at 104 Oakwood Circle. We are a community that has a census population of 50,000. You take out 15,000 to 20,000 students, and we're a community of 30,000, and that 30,000 are the property taxpayers and the people who are providing for the income and support of this community. And to ask those 30,000 people to fund this type of project is important. You've talked a lot about the $28 million to build it. I'd like for you to remind you that it's $1 million a year to operate it. And that $1 million a year comes out of our property taxes. Now, there's some projections in here that there'll be revenue. Revenue is somewhere around $400,000. But I would also caution you to go back and look at revenue estimates of other projects we've had. The Discovery Center Star Bond application. Check the revenue that was projected there and the actual revenue over the last 10 years. Look at the revenue from the 3 recreational centers that was projected, and then look at what we've experienced. How many teams have come in, and it's early. It may grow. But those revenue estimates are tough to make. The problem of our economy right now is a serious problem. If we're growing at an 8% inflation rate and our salaries, even with the city increases of 5%, everybody's losing money. And they're having to make critical decisions on how they spend their money. So not only will the project go up 24% in the next 3 years, from 24 million to another 30 million, or from 30 million to 40 million, but the people's ability to spend $6 for every session, which the revenue estimates are based upon, goes down. The discretionary income is just not there. That's why you ought to build at Seco Park, where there's more discretionary income and potentially more revenue than there might be someplace else. But the problem is that the revenue is what's going to govern how much the income, the property tax is going to be raised. And that's the tough issue. The final point I would like to make is that in this community, we've had a history of asking people who really want something to put their money where their motivation is. Everything from the Johnny Cost statue, the welcome sign, the Norville Amphitheater, the Weefold Pavilion, to even Expedition Asia. We've asked people who really want these projects to fund them. Show us your money. And to date, I was disappointed in the rec complexes. Nobody put any money into that. They put some money into the bond issue campaign, but they didn't put any money into the project. And so I would ask that one of the things that we really look at is to say, where can we find this extra money? If it's really needed, if it's really valuable, then there ought to be people who are willing to fund it. I don't know enough about YMCA and how those organizations work. I don't know. It seems to me like YMCA can fund that type of project that Betty's talking about, where people go in and get good things. It doesn't meet the competitive 8-lane, 12-lane, 24-lane swimming pool that is costing the 20,000 square feet of the 30,000 square feet that we're trying to build. And those are the projects. You know, I agree that it'd be nice. But one of the dangers you have in just saying, let us vote, is that we know that 1 leader and 12 disciples can change the world. And we've got 1 leader and 117 people here who are committed to going out and doing this. And you put onto that a feeling that if you're against this project, you're against the future of Manhattan. You're against everything. And so everybody who's against it is not wanting to do it, but they secretly say, can we afford this? Is this good for our community, financially and our economic stability in our future? And you can argue all you want that everything we do is quality of life, but somehow the quality of life doesn't mean that we don't have to pay our employees the same rate that the people in Goodland and the people in someplace else are spending. So that doesn't translate to me in a lot of savings. But for those reasons, you've got a lot of things to consider, and I would encourage you to step forward and be the voice of all the people that you've gone door to door and meeting, and not just the ones who have particular interests in this community and the ability perhaps to pass a bond issue that could have long-lasting sales tax and property tax implications.
Thank you, Joe. Does anyone else wish to come forward? I'm sure there are.
My name's Helena Grinter. I live at 1523 Gibbons Road. Grew up here, moved away, came back. It's good to see Jason. I haven't seen you since our days at the natatorium at 6 in the morning. Grew up swimming with the Marlins. Was a lifeguard here. My kids grew up swimming with the Marlins, and they were lifeguards. And I just want to say, waiting 5 or 7 years, we can't afford to wait. We will not have lifeguards. The lifeguards come from the swim team, and I don't know how they've managed to keep a program without a pool in this town, but they've done a good job of that by using resources elsewhere. But 5 years is a long time to ask people to swim in Fort Riley or wherever they've been going to keep the swim team active. But I just want to say the problem with the lifeguards, you're right, Mark, it's hard to get good lifeguards. You need to have strong swimmers, and they come from the swim team. You cannot have someone swim in the side stroke to get someone in the deep end. You need to have strong swimmers. So I think we need to do what we can to keep our program alive. Otherwise, you won't have lifeguards for the outdoor pools. Oh. Thank you for your consideration on all that.
Thank you, Helena. Someone else?
You already heard from my other half. I won't exactly say maybe better half. I'm Monica McFarlane, and I also live at 213 Parker. When I first started my job at K-State, made a condition of my employment to have an hour-and-a-half lunch, because I was going to swim 3 days a week, and I would stay half hour later or come in half hour earlier. That became a really important thing for me in the winter of 2019 when I broke my tailbone. I could not do any other type of exercise. I used to go to the rec and I used to be on the rowing machine, or I'd be on the elliptical, or I'd be on the bike. You can't sit with a broken tailbone. It's extremely painful. And you actually have to go to a neurosurgeon to have that fixed. But swimming was one exercise that I could do that would take a lot of pressure off those joints, and I could move. And it actually helped reduce stress from being a student and also an employee at the same time, because I'm also still a grad student. But these were really important things to me. And then, of course, unfortunately, with COVID, natatorium closed. And we don't have those type of facilities here for people who have particular injuries. Maybe I'm accident prone. I broke my ankle at the beginning of this year on another patch of ice. And that point in time, I went to orthopedic sports med, and they are jam-packed almost every day with people there for physical therapy. And those are really important facilities to have for some people in our community who either need it for short-term or long-term therapy. But, you have a very large community, people who are still swimming, who are going to be your lifeguards. That's a quality of life for them. You don't want to have to send your students out to another community. But you also have people here who just want to be able to rehabilitate and have a way to do that and still have an active and healthy lifestyle in your community as well. So just important things to think about.
Thank you, Monica.
Hello, I'm Anthony Young. I live at 318 Palomino Lane in Ogden.
I missed your name.
Anthony Young.
Anthony, thank you. Okay.
I live out in Ogden, 318 Palomino Lane. I think that the introduction of a new natatorium would increase the attractiveness of Manhattan more than it already is. So it would stand out more to the towns in Kansas and other cities in Kansas not just based on the college or Aggieville or other standout features, but it puts us on the map. It allows other schools to come here and compete at our natatorium for swim teams. It just invites more people here. It will make us look better. I don't know, the funding is a little iffy, obviously. That's a big issue that is talked about. And I think putting it up to a vote for the people whose money will be going towards it is a good idea. Asking the people who have to pay for it if they want to pay for it, and what they think the main purpose of it would be, or what the product of something like this would be.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate you coming from Ogden. You might be making the case that it would draw people to the community from the outside area, too.
Exactly. I live in Ogden, and some people in Ogden, if they'd have to, not everybody who lives in Ogden is in the military, so they don't have access to that Fort Riley gym pool, and they'd have to go to Junction City. And I think a pool in Manhattan, bringing more people into Manhattan, I don't know. I think it would be helpful.
Thank you. Somebody else was coming. Yes, good, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Karen Graves. I live at 435 Edgerton Avenue. I'm a family practice physician in this town for the last, 18 years now. I've enjoyed living in this town. I am also the board president of the Manhattan Marlin swim team. So I have a very vested interest in a lot of things about this aquatic center, and I'd like you to know Yes, there's 50,000 people in our town, but the other 20,000 use it because they do not have a K-State natatorium anymore. To look for some way to fund this, I believe K-State should be looked at too, because this could be included in their rec program as well. So we could utilize that to run the pool as well. I think if you look at a pool like this, yes, the 8-lane, 25-yard competition pool would be very nice because you can host swim meets here. You can bring many people to your town. Now we can only host one swim meet here a year at City Park Pool. Before, we could host a fall meet, and we could also host district meets. Those bring a lot of people to our town. They bring money in, they popularize us. There's a lot of benefits. There's also a health benefit. I love to refer people for aquatherapy. We have very, very limited resources here. That would be a huge implement that we could get No Stone Unturned, Ascension Via Christi. You could get even some private payers on board. Orthopedics. I mean, there's different people to look at to fund this. Everybody in this town could use this for many different reasons. I will say I have kept this team going despite not having a pool here in town since, what was that, the spring of 2020. I've had a lot of people helping me, but it has been a very difficult job. We swim in Wamego, very poor pool. We had a swimmer and coach die in that pool because it was not being supervised properly by lifeguards. So swimming at Genesis without lifeguards, not a real good option. No offense to anyone here from Genesis. That is where our high school swims now. It's not a very good pool, no gutters. You can't dive into that pool very well. It's very short, so you can't compete in that pool. I would say we go out to Fort Riley. They have one pool now. It's not real ideal. It may be shut down on us. So you may have people from Fort Riley wanting to come use this. I have multiple requests right now for people to join the Marlins, and not just from this town. Fort Riley, Junction City, Ogden, Wamego. So it does bring people to this town. So I would like you to think of all these things when you're considering the feasibility of this, because I think it's important now. We can't wait 5 more years. We don't have that ability. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm very nervous. Obviously, I don't do this. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 6.
What's your name?
My name's Shauna Ballman, and I live at 3111 Harahay Ridge.
Don't be nervous. We aren't going to do it.
Okay. I'm just
Okay.
not used to doing this.
All right.
I really feel strongly that we are at a point of sink or swim right now with the pool. The university is losing opportunities with new staff because we don't have an indoor aquatic center. There are companies that aren't interested, or young professionals that see that we don't have a pool and they don't want to come here. Also, I'm reiterating, there's soldiers, whether enlisted or officers, that choose not to come to this amazing city because we don't have a pool. And also, there was a mention earlier about lifeguards. One thing I think that wasn't mentioned was the lifeguarding staff in Manhattan is amazing, and they do a phenomenal job. I'm not really sure who to thank for that, but they're wonderful. They're really good, and they're on top of things, and I think that needs to be recognized, and I don't think we should ever feel like we have too much safety at the pool. I'm also the mother of the coach that died. He had an unknown heart condition and fainted. If he were on land, he would have been alive. But unfortunately, it wasn't noticed. And finally, I think what swimming does for us, for everyone, whether it's something you're going to be doing, maybe you'd be considering doing it if we had a pool, if you haven't swam yet, or if it's something you've done your whole life. It's it changes. Whether you're going just to cool off, if you're just going to play with your kids, having a safe place to go to get some exercise is wonderful. And a last note, and this is not meant to be disrespectful at all, but wherever it looks like we're putting the pool, it sounds like it's going to be next to an open air pool. I got late because my son was swimming at Fort Riley. But is that right? Wherever the pool is, will it be next to an open pool? Yeah, so that might be a reason not to do the retractable roof, just because it might double the cost.
Okay.
It's just an idea out there, and I'm sure I'm going to go home and think about 100 things I wish I said, but thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Hello?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm John Ballman. That was my wife. She stole some of my thunder, but that's okay. That's permitted. I'm at 3111 Hay Ridge. I think it's pretty clear there's a general consensus that Manhattan needs a pool, and I think you all agree. I think there's also a general consensus that Manhattan does not know how to pay for an aquatic center, an indoor aquatic center at this point. So we are at a crossroads, and really my best, I don't want to call it advice, my request, I guess, is you put together a fantastic group on that steering committee. I was one of the members. I really appreciate being appointed and being able to take part in that. I recommend in your deliberations on this that you maybe consider reconvening that same steering committee to consider funding options, to engage the community, to engage K-State, to engage the high school, to engage all those who might have a vested interest, and let them maybe come back to you with another recommendation for funding. Because I know taxation, it's always an option, whether it's sales or whether it's a mill levy, or we know that we can always go to that. Whether people really will support it or not is an unknown until we put it to a vote. But I really believe there are some creative options out there as well that can perhaps enhance that option, maybe even replace that option. And if there's anybody who could figure that out, I think it's those 14 people that I was able to sit with and hear them talk, working with Tracy, with Councilman Hunsaker, with Jason. So again, if you were looking for anyone to propose any suggestions, I'd consider reconvening that group. Otherwise, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a question, Mayor, for Ron or Jason. Wasn't that part of the charter to come back at some point with some options on funding?
Part of their charge was more of what Tracy and the group have put together. If the commission would like us to come back with options, we can certainly develop those. And as he mentioned, look to the partners within the community. Tracy and I have had a lot of conversations about privately fundraising for this as well. Would there be a level that the city and the governing body would like to see in that fundraising in order to match or have some sort of level that you'd like to see in this total privately fundraised? Because Tracy's had a lot more conversations than I have, but I'm aware and been a part of other ventures in this community where there's significant dollars out there potentially. You do need to package it, and you do need to stay diligent with it. But with the group you have in the room and the connections that people have, there may be that option as well.
Are there others that would wish to offer comment? If you'd come forward, please. Good evening.
Hi there, my name's Mike Dillon, 2823 Illinois Lane. I know a little bit about background of swimming in Manhattan, Kansas. In 1979, I started running as a manager of all 4 city swimming pools until 1995, when I decided I'd like to have my summers back. I was coaching 3 sports and running swimming pools. So this time my wife and I got to travel. I've run the old IWW pool for many years after it was renovated. I was also the boys' high school swim team coach from 1976 to 1999. I was a girls' high school swim coach from 1986 to 1993 when my last child graduated from high school. So I could run the swimming pools for 2 more years, and then I could really get a life in the summers. I graduated from MHS, Mankato High School. I was not on a swim team. I knew my swimming experience before I became a swim coach was putting lures and running lines, fishing lines in Level Lake and Jewell County, Kansas. I got into it through Bob Howard, who asked me to do it. I was coaching football at the time. We were a very successful football team. We were a very successful swim team, and they're still successful. They got a great coach at this point, as far everything I hear. We hosted state swim meets here for several years. I was the one that was running them. At that time, we only had about 4 hotels. They were always filled. They were filled usually for 2 days. We also hosted a huge swim meet with us, basically everybody in the state of Kansas except for the Sunflower Week, 2 weeks before the state meet. We had a lot of kids from western Kansas who came here, saw the pool at K-State, wanted to go there. K-State did not put a lot of money in that pool from those years that I was there. But it was a very quality pool prior to them closing it or not putting much money in it. So is it going to bring in large amounts? Well, it won't bring any amount in now. You're not getting anything. You're not getting recruiting for K-State because kids coming here to swim. I would venture to guess that swimmers are probably in the top 1/3 of the intelligence because of what I call how you use your mind and how you develop your mind and some of that stuff. It's probably the most physically demanding sport there is. Maybe I couldn't have done it. I could coach it, and I got very smart in the 90s. We were always in the top 2 or 3 in boys and in the top 4 or 5 in girls. But we had kids who were, I used in the summer to do lifeguard training. K-State we'd use WSIs. I got away from the Red Cross swim lessons because they were antiquated. They were not good. I brought Swim America here. You weren't commissioners then. For about half hour one night, I was berated as the swim coach. I thought that was a good thing. I didn't think that was a bad thing. I thought that was a good thing. So I just think we need something somewhere. I would include a diving well because water temperatures are huge on how fast you went. Water depth is huge and how fast you go. Safety is a huge thing. I just think that it will draw people more than it will turn people. If you don't have one, you talk about quality of life. You talk about these quality of life things we've had in Manhattan. I moved here in 1968, and every once in a while we get these quality of life things. Well, there's not anything better for quality of life than an indoor 12-month pool, because there's a lot of people can use it for a lot of things. Leland Wrights was my doctor for a long time. After swim meets, or after swim practices, I see Leland coming down to get in the water when our kids were leaving after workout. So I'm all for it. I think there's a lot of people who worry about money too much because your quality of life is what it is now, not 5, 6, 7 years from now. Thank you. I better write my name down.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you can't speak twice. Thank you, though.
Send your son up.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from some of these swimmers.
Does anyone else please come forward?
My name's Alex Brown, and I've been referenced a couple times up here. I am the Manhattan High current head swim coach.
Okay. Good.
So prior to COVID shutting down the K-State Natatorium, we were by far the largest swim and dive program in the state of Kansas, all classifications. I had 50 boys and 60 girls on my team the 2019 to 2020 season. Currently, our numbers are down to about probably 60 to 65 or so between our two programs, and it's because we no longer have a whole lot of space to practice in. We're very thankful to Genesis for letting us practice there at all, because if we had to go out of town like we did last year when there were no pools in this city, we probably would no longer have a program. I'm not sure how we'd be able to afford it. So we're very thankful to them for that, but they have a 6-lane pool, and it's very hard for a single 6-lane pool to meet the needs of 50,000 plus people, because there are a lot of K-State students that go to Genesis. We see them every day when we're practicing there. My biggest thing with this, and it may shock some people, of course, this is for our swim teams. We would absolutely use a facility, and it would be a huge benefit to us. We used to have over 1,000 kids come to meets in Manhattan every year between our boys and girls season, all visiting K-State's campus that no longer are coming here anymore. But my biggest thing with this is we need something for our community. I am getting married in a week and a half, and my soon-to-be wife and I want to live here. We want to raise kids here, but with swimming being such a big part of our family, I can't say that I haven't had family of my own ask me why would I want to stay here. And I have known many families that have asked that exact same question. Why would we want to stay in a community that after decades continues to push off this aquatic center issue? I spoke with, every meet I go to, I get questioned about why we don't have an indoor pool in Manhattan. How does a city the size of Manhattan not have this? People are baffled across the state. I work with teams from Dodge City to Kansas City and lots of sizes in between, and I do not go to a single meet where I am not questioned about this, and I've had the word, it's kind of embarrassing, thrown at me many times. But as I was starting to mention, the biggest thing with my future wife and I is we want somewhere for our kids and to get swim lessons. Where can the children of our community get swim lessons? You can pray that they don't fill up too quickly in the summer with the high demand for them. And the other big thing is, how are the seniors in our community going to get the exercise and the benefits from aquatic fitness that they need? If you can afford the Genesis membership, that's one option. It's not for everybody. And again, I don't want to speak ill of them because they have been so good to us, and I am so thankful for Genesis, because without them, we would not have a program, likely. But that's my biggest thing, is I want something that the whole community can use, not just our swim teams. We're a small part of the community. We'd benefit from this greatly. But in the end, this is something that the people have been asking for forever. And I really hope that it's very heavily considered going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Please come forward.
My name is Catherine Crane, and I live 610 Kearney in Manhattan. And I'm not starting a family. As you see, I'm older. I came here from France, and I was used to two things, the mountains and the sea. And I came here, there was no mountains and there was no sea. But one thing that made my life possible in Manhattan was being able to swim at Kansas State Natatorium. And at some point in my life, when I was having some difficulties with some chronic pain, it also affected my mental health, to be in pain all the time. And the one thing that kept me alive and kept me going was to be able to go swimming. And to tell you the truth, since the natatorium has been closed, I've been wondering, why am I staying here? Why am I not moving somewhere else? Because really, for someone who needs to swim to feel alive, I just feel I'm half dead in Manhattan without a swimming pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that want to speak?
Hi, my name is Jackie Sandeman, and I live on 509 Harlan Drive. I wasn't going to talk, but so I'm very nervous too. So I just decided I have to say something. My daughter, right there, she is part of the Manhattan High School swim team, and right now she's the only diver that the school has. And we have to drive every day of the week to Topeka so she can practice there. It's just really sad that our community has a 6A school without a swimming pool. When we go to Topeka and when we go to the meets, I mean, we spend a lot of money there because we have to go eat and we get gas. And I feel like if our community had something like that, it would be the same thing. We would have people from other schools coming to our town. They would be spending money. They would be just hanging around the town and going to the mall, going to get something to eat around town. So that would bring money to our community. The expense of the pool, I understand, but I think there are so many other ways that we could pay for this besides increasing taxes. I feel like the USD 383 should be able to contribute to that, the same with K-State. Topeka right now, the pool where we go is a Capital Federal. So that was basically like a sponsor kind of thing with the bank. And I feel like we can do something like that here too. It doesn't all have to come from taxpayers' money. We do need a swimming pool. The kids need a swimming pool. The elderly people need a swimming pool. We all need a swimming pool. It's just embarrassing that we don't have an indoor swimming pool right now with our town. When we go to Emporia to compete, the school has a swimming pool. They also have an aquatic center, and they are like half the size of our population. So I still cannot comprehend why we don't have a pool in this town. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Does anyone else care to speak tonight? Going once? Oops, okay.
I too was not planning on speaking, but I just thought I wanted to share my perspective on this. My name is Stephanie Rivera. I live at 416 Laramie Street here in Manhattan. And my partner Tim and I are not much of we're not really swimmers as adults. I grew up in Urbandale, Iowa, small suburb of Des Moines. We did have an indoor pool in our community, and I grew up with that, knowing that that was there all the time. Spent a lot of time there as a kid. My dad made it a point to teach to make sure that my brothers and I were all taught how to swim. I think part of that was peace of mind as a parent, knowing that if we go to somebody's house and swim at somebody's pool, or if we go to the lake with somebody who wasn't them, they'd know that we have the skills to hopefully save our own lives if it came to that. So, as a citizen who may not even use this facility, although I would love to learn how to swim a little bit better, I'm still willing to help in any way I can to make this happen, because I know how important this is, because it was so important for me growing up, because it was important for my parents. So from my perspective, I urge all of you to, going forward, make sure that the question in your mind is not, will we make this happen, but how will we make this happen? And I have full confidence that this city can come up with a way to get this pool one way or another. So, and when it comes to both staffing and funding, I have full confidence that the answer's out there, and I think it's amongst our community. So, that's all.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
If anyone else would like to speak, if you'd come up, please. This would be the going twice. All right, going 3 times. With that, I'm going to close the public comment period, and let's see, instructions are. Yeah. The commissioners will be discussing this now, and if you'd like to start, John, Commissioner Mata.
Yeah, I think kind of start a little earlier with the conversation, and Jason chimed in. I think one of the things we need to do is go ahead and go back to the group to see if they can come up with some ideas. And we talked about the funding. I think it's going to take partnerships with some other entities locally, probably some fundraising, and then maybe some alternative things we haven't even thought of yet. I mean, when we looked at the numbers, even if we waited till 27, the 0.25 wouldn't cover it, which also means if you go 0.25 or higher, and you want to do it sooner, you're adding on top of that. So I think it's going to have to be, if it's going to be a question that's put out there, it's going to take multiple components, which makes it difficult because that's often more difficult to understand as a ballot measure. But I think that's something that we need to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, I find, I've always liked the idea of the pool. I voted for it in 2007. I wasn't on the commission then, but I did vote. And 68% of the population voted against it, which is why we don't have it. And so, I've heard a lot of talk tonight saying, boy, everybody wants the pool. Well, in 2007, 68% of the voters that showed up to vote did not want the pool. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, I also think, that this whole project really centers around the bottom line, and that's dollars, and that's always the bottom line, it seems like. I can see, the city investment being a renewal of the quality of life sales tax, but no more than that, because I'm not willing to vote to raise property tax for a pool or raise the sales tax above the current level. So what that means, like John said, we need USD to figure out how to help us with this. Because, my daughter was on the diving team, by the way, many years ago, and they used an auditorium then. And so I understand the need for that, but the USD is going to have to be a big player in this, because a lot of this will be supporting the school district. And then, as John said, we really need to take a real hard look at, are there grants out there? Can the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation play a role in this? And I know this is a massive amount of money, but, some of the other projects that were done, like the band shell, was pretty expensive. They mentioned the Johnny Cobb Plaza, but that was really peanuts at, under $300,000 compared to what this is. And I know people have been willing to donate for that, but I think that's what we've got to do. And I did like the one suggestion there that the committee, which, I think was, the commission appointed them, everybody put in some things, and I think, Ron, you even made a chart for me that showed that we had people representing from all over. And if somebody's got some great ideas on funding, we need to be open to that. But what I'm not open to is a funding solution, which is let's hang 5 more mills on the population. And the other thing is, if we renew the quality of life sales tax, that needs to be reworded so that it includes operation, which Joe Knopp keeps pointing out, at every meeting, that, we're just covering the building. We got to cover it for operations. And if we, as Jason said, what's the delta? Well, if you take that quality of life sales tax, assume we can renew it early, then you can say that'll bring in this much money. Where's the deficit? And then figure out some outside sources to make that deficit happen. And then again, the citizen's going to end up having to vote on this. I don't think, the commission's going to decide to spend this money. It's going to go on the ballot. And we're gonna have to do a lot better than 68% no to make it happen.
So I think, reviewing the entire packet, the reason we even let them move forward with the steering committee and to undertake this is because I think there is still a need in the community, especially since the auditorium shut down. I think when the voters voted in the past, they figured we still have the auditorium. They didn't like it at Seco Pool. They didn't like it at Seco Park. They didn't like some of the ideas that were being mentioned. They thought the city pool can have the dome. So there was a lot of things happening during that time. I remember the Marlins always using Seco Pool or the auditorium for practice and such. There is a need. I think all of you have defined that need. Just last week, we were in Pensacola, Florida. Wonderful beach, but they also had an indoor pool. And we spent our time even in the indoor pool, even though they had a beach, because it was easier on my husband's knees to use the indoor pool. So I think one of the things we learned from our census is the demographics are changing in our community. The senior citizen population is increasing. And we just have different needs because of that. When we talk about ADA accessibility, it's not just senior citizens, it's just about everybody. Any type of orthopedic surgery, any athletes, anybody who needs it, it would be very a good way, not just for mental health, but physical health. So I think you can't quantify that. You can't really keep a database on how well you're impacting somebody's physical and mental health. So I think there's plenty of needs for that. I think private funding is something we need to look at. I think we need to look at fundraising for such an initiative. If the pool in the long run, whether it's the 25, 8 lanes or the 14 lanes, whatever it is, that cost is going to increase, especially since we do need to have operational costs in there. We are overextended right now in several of our projects, and what we recognized with the rec centers is the operational cost is something we need to continue to put into our budget. So when we do put this out on a ballot initiative, whether it's next year or in the future, whatever it is, that operational cost needs to be in there so that there is a funding source for our staffing. Without that, we're going to see cuts again, or it will be impacting the community and our residents in a different way. I think the revenue will also be collected from all the people that come and visit Manhattan. So I do see something as far as a revenue track in that case. We do need to engage Kansas State University. I think without an auditorium, there might be a case to be made there for how they can also help out with this. We talked about USD 383. We talked about the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, maybe some kind of fundraising. If the community can meet us halfway, it would be a better sell to the community so that the city and the community members can meet the other half. If there were private donors, whether it be one donor or 5 or 6 donors who can pick up some of that, it would definitely ease the burden on the rest of the community. An indoor pool takes a lot of high maintenance. It's extremely different than a outdoor pool. Just the maintenance, not even the lifeguards or anything of that sort. So that will continue to grow. Let's see. Okay, state Medicaid. I think I support this. I support the indoor pool. And as you've heard, it's the funding that's going to keep that dialogue going. I hope the committee gets back together and looks at those sources. I think you have great minds in play. You have highly motivated people on that community steering committee and 117 people who might have an interest also to participate. This is doable. I see it as a reality in the city of Manhattan. I think we need to look at how we're going to fund this so it is accessible to everybody, but it also is not so burdensome that people don't want to move into the city of Manhattan. This should not be cost prohibitive for anybody to move into the city of Manhattan. So we want to keep that, we want to keep it a functioning community where everybody has access to it, but also wants to live in the city of Manhattan or come from surrounding areas and spend their money here and use our pools at the same time. Thank you for all the work you've done, and thank you for all the comments you've made, and also from Ogden. I taught at Ogden Elementary School for many years, so it's very nice to hear somebody from Ogden coming here and speaking to it as well.
Well, I was on the commission during the 2006 or so, the previous bond issue vote for the pool out at Seco. And part of the problem with that one was it was trying to be all things. It was going to be the indoor recreation thing. It was going to be a 50-meter indoor pool, and a daycare center, because we needed daycare, and so in the community, and so it just got out of hand to the point where it was just too expensive, and for all the reasons previously stated, it just wasn't gonna. It was too much. One of the things, and you look at the other communities with YMCA's, and Kurt Laup, the previous Parks and Rec guy here at the city, said when he came from the Y in Topeka, it's like he was in a constant source of fundraising, right, Ron? He said that all the time. He's there. Well, those YMCA's are in a never-ending fundraising thing to keep the place afloat. Now you look at places like we got to have a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy to help with this, either the maintenance or the construction. El Dorado's got the refinery, help prop theirs up. Newton's got the hospital, or their pool's affiliated with the hospital. Cap Fed apparently is helping out in Topeka, and so yeah, I see there's no reason that we couldn't have the large local steel company pool, or some part of some foundation. I think Vern, either down at the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, either he would have a small amount of money he could probably designate, but I think the idea, if we could get $5 or $10 million, which ought to be doable, along with some potential for naming by corporate sponsors, to come up with 10 to 12 million maybe, and then maybe you could do a 1/4-cent sales tax, and then maybe to keep the ongoing maintenance, we could get the K-State students to devote $100,000 a year towards operations. And since the university closed down the auditorium, they're under some obligation, I would think, to help with this, simply because their students, while the community went there, now all their students are going here, and that may be a big reason that their enrollment is dropping too. I don't know. There's people go to colleges for different reasons, and not having a facility like that, when you're used to having a facility like that, could be a reason that has gone down. And I don't know, when the 2023 economic development, infrastructure, workforce housing tax comes in, I don't know if we could earmark. There's a million things that money can go to, and we want to save some for economic development infrastructure. But yeah, maybe we could come up with $5 or $10 million out of that sales tax, come up with a 1/4% sales tax, come up with $5 to $10 million of private money in sponsorships. There ought to be some way to pull this out if we can get the best and brightest minds thinking about it, and because it's not going to be a simple 1/4-cent sales tax put to the voters. That ain't gonna. It's been proven that's been shown that we can't raise enough money that way. So as you guys talk about stuff on the committee, we need to start. And I'll talk to Vern and everybody else who knows Vern Hendricks, talk to him and bend his ear and see what kind of bright ideas that he has for ways that money that he might have available already to earmark for that, or some corporate sponsor or someplace that might be able to help us with some of the private money. And I think that's going to be the key, because we're going to have to, either whether it's to get it built or more likely to keep it going, we're going to need some private money, just because it's worth it to some company to have some naming rights or to be involved with that, I would think.
I certainly support the indoor aquatic center, and financing is the problem, and that's a problem. And it's going to take something like the commission here in their discussion. It's going to take putting all of that package together to make this happen, because none of us have enough to do it. And certainly, I appreciate the work you've done to put this together, all of you, and I'd hope that you would reform. We need one person to come forward and say, I'm willing to work on this and put something together. And right now, I think it's continuing the committee, and I don't know how to enlarge it. I know it has to be manageable, so maybe it's just starting with the committee. but it would have to grow in order to be successful with this amount of money. Anything else?
No, I think the commission has given us good direction and wants to see this committee continue and work on some funding solutions and options for you. So I would hope that the committee members would continue to serve in that capacity, and we can continue to work on bringing it forward. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. And thank you all for serving on that committee. It's been a project that you've enjoyed and appreciated and felt that you were making a contribution, so thank you. You have made a contribution to the community. So we're ready to move on with the agenda. You're welcome to stay. Do we need a break?
Nope.
No, we're gonna plow on through? Okay. The next item on the agenda is to continue action regarding the denial of board appointments from the April 19th, 2022 commission meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll brief this item for you for the commission. At the April 19th commission meeting, there was a vote of 3-2 to deny 2 reappointments that were recommended by the mayor. Following that meeting, at the May 3rd meeting, when we had a discussion item on the commission's policies and procedures, we informed the commission that based on some research that there were some additional state statutes that informed that action, and in order for that denial to be confirmed, additional action would be necessary. That state statute is 12-16-128, and it states that the governing body shall approve any such mayoral appointment unless the governing body makes a specific finding by the passage of a resolution that the person is either unqualified to hold the office or is not fit to hold the office or position. There's also Kansas Attorney General Opinion number 2008-23 that stated that the governing body is not required to articulate its basis for its finding to deny the appointments. There's also an unpublished disposition of the Kansas Court of Appeals held that the governing body's confirmation of the appointments is considered a legislative function within the discretion of the governing body. Thus, based on the majority of commission at the May 3rd meeting who wanted to continue to confirm the denial, we prepared 2 resolutions for you to consider tonight. We also have 2 different motions that have been provided to you relative to either affirming the denials, or allowing the reappointment, or a no vote would allow the 45 days in the statute to allow the appointment to occur. So we'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you may have, but that's based on the direction provided at the last commission meeting. We prepared the resolutions as requested.
Okay. Thank you for teeing it up, I guess. All right. So, I guess that was the presentation, and now we're open for public comment. Pardon? Commission discussion. None. I didn't see any. Okay, now we're open for public comment. I think you heard the rules earlier. Hi.
Yes, hi. My name is Annie Cook. I moved to Manhattan 6 years ago by way of the Netherlands, before that Wisconsin, before that Virginia, but originally I'm from Illinois. I had the realization today that this is the longest I've lived in a place since moving from Illinois 21 years ago. Quickly after arriving in Manhattan, you see that it is a melting pot. I challenge you all to walk around town and look at the license plate, out-of-state license plates. It won't take you very long to find all 50. I can attest to this because me and my kids had made a game out of it and made a list of all the out-of-state license plates. And not only did we find all 50 states, we actually found some foreign countries, states as well. Manhattan is uniquely situated between Kansas State and Fort Riley, which draws people from all over the country and all over the world. Because of Manhattan's location, it also greets people from both densely populated areas and bringing in from more rural communities. Manhattan has great opportunity to welcome these populations and make them feel Manhattan is their home. That way, when it is time for them to choose their permanent residence, as stated earlier, this is a lot of a transient community, they can choose Manhattan as that permanent residence. The diverse population that provides Manhattan a rich resource of people from different backgrounds, which leads to people with different perspectives. In my job, I work daily with people from India, Philippines, Canada, and across the United States, thanks to Zoom. I'm constantly in awe of the innovative ideas and solutions that transpire when you get a group of people from different backgrounds. It's crucial to have these various viewpoints on city boards, city commissions, and other various government bodies. The Human Rights and Services Board represents this melting pot, and we have made it one of our goals to create that welcoming community where Manhattan feels like home, no matter your background or where you come from. With your backing and support, I hope to continue volunteering as a member of the Human Rights and Services Board so I can work with our members to strive to accomplish that goal. As the brilliant Walt Whitman and Ted Lasso said, be curious, not judgmental. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Annie, I nominated you for reappointment because you have already served a term, and that was 3 years, right?
Correct.
Correct. And so my nomination of you is for an additional 1-year term or 3 years. Yes.
Yes.
And while you were on the board those first 3 years, were there any big controversial items?
No. So our biggest hurdle that we were trying to overcome is to have people know we exist. And so that was one of our main goals, is to do more community outreach. And that's what we have been working on these last couple of years. And building those relationships with the community. So if they have an issue or want to bring something to the city commission, that it's not a scary thing to come to a meeting and express that concern that they have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Does anyone else wish to speak? I do. To this item? Hi.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Colleen Lind. I live at 2048 Hunting Avenue. I'll be speaking as a concerned citizen tonight, but I'll also be drawing on my experience as a scholar of public participation in politics and governance. I have read both of the resolutions, which have not been read yet, but I've read them in your packet that was provided tonight, and I disagree with the premise that either one of these people are not fit or qualified to serve. I think that their past service, as well as testimony from their fellow committee and board members, would attest to that. I would think that this statement that we just heard would attest to that. But rather than dwell on that, I would like to talk about what I see as some potential negative long-term consequences for passing these resolutions. I'm concerned that reducing board and advisory committee appointments to a brazenly political process in which nominees are chosen based on their conformity to the interests or ideology or even just community background with the majority of the commission is not the direction that we want to go. Realistically, I could see why commissioners would say, why not? The majority should rule in this matter, should it not? Is this not how democratic politics works? But I think that we can see that that kind of pure politics has reduced our politics at a national level to near dysfunction, and it's not what we would want in our own community. But I would even go a step further and say that by choosing our volunteers for these committees on a purely political majority rules kind of system sets us up for attracting fewer people into service and the wrong kinds of people into service, or not getting the kind of diversity that we need. Aristotle said that we're all political animals, and I'm sure that's true to a certain extent, but some people just really don't go for those political instincts. Nevertheless, they have incredible passions or expertise or experiences that would be valuable to the city and its citizens through these volunteer boards and committees. However, they're not interested in pursuing the kind of political work that it would take to necessarily be chosen if majority was the way, a majority conviction vote was always the way that they were chosen. I would also remind you, as Commissioner Reddy has in your past conversations on this matter, that the system now is working. Because we have a mayor who only serves a one-year term, there is not an opportunity for any one person to unduly influence the makeup of our boards, advisory boards, and commissions. There's also the opportunity, as we have now learned through this process, for any worst-case scenario for the commission to weigh in an instance when there is, for whatever reason, someone who is unfit or unqualified who has made it through the nomination process. Most importantly, I would just say that the system that we have now is working because it brings in a diversity of experiences and ideas. Anyone who studies organizations or organizational behavior will tell you that committees and groups that represent a diversity of opinions and ideas and experiences produce higher quality products. Commissioners, I am so excited about all of the things that are happening in Manhattan right now. It's marvelous, the millions of dollars that are being invested in Manhattan currently, from the Scorpion initiative to the Back Nine development in Aggieville to Art and Light. With this is going to come many changes to Manhattan and new challenges. We need advisory boards, or advisory committees and boards that bring to you the very best that they can. We have now a system that does that by bringing in a diversity of people. I fear that if we go down this path and choose people based on majority vote, the very people who have not been in the community the longest and therefore don't have a lot of social ties, and those who represent distinct minority communities and minority opinions are the ones who are not going to end up on our advisory boards. We need those folks on those boards. We need to hear from them. And we need to have some disagreement, perhaps even at times, between what the advisory committees and boards are offering and what you would see as the best path forward. That disagreement is perfectly appropriate and okay, and ultimately you as a commission have the final say in all policy per statute as it allows you. So I would encourage you to vote no on both of these resolutions tonight and to think long and hard about the long-term consequences of going this direction.
Thank you, Colleen. Does anyone else wish to speak?
I don't have to go the second time, right? I'm on here. So actually, what I came here for tonight was
Monica McFarlane.
Yes,
Okay.
Monica McFarlane, sorry. Was actually this topic. I'm passionate about public service. I think it's pretty apparent. I did run for city commission. A lot of people probably won't run for office. Some people will find other ways to serve their communities by trying to be on advisory boards or on different committees. My biggest concern is some of the stated reasons on the record for that April 19th meeting as to why people were not wanted on these advisory boards and these committees. Now, granted, that was not within state rules, and you don't have to state tonight, if you vote yes on the resolution, why you find some of those candidates either unfit or unqualified. However, your original statements on April 19th, I will remind you, were not that they were either unfit or unqualified. So to sit there and say now on the public record is a little disingenuous and not really fair to the people who actually had done the work and had shown that they had cared for this community and had come up with maybe some resolutions or ideas that did not agree with what you wanted to see. And you said you either wanted new blood or you wanted people who agreed with what you wanted for the community. But you are the commission. You do have a way to overturn some of those decisions. So trying to rubber stamp everything before they get to you isn't really in the best minds of the community. It's not allowing for a variety of different opinions, a variety of different ideas. They all have their own set of charge of rules that they have to follow and things that they have to look at, and they bring those, to you. That may not agree with what your idea is for the city, and that's fine. We've elected you to make those decisions. But I don't think people elected you to take away people being able to participate as volunteers for their community. I feel that that's extremely disingenuous.
Here she comes. Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
We're through with public comments?
Yep.
Okay. All right, it's time for commission discussion. You have no comments.
No, we already covered it in the past couple meetings.
If there are no comments, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move we approve the reappointment of Annie Cook, 2834 Oregon Lane, to the Manhattan Human Rights and Services Board to a 3-year term which begins immediately and will expire on March 9th, 2025.
And I second the motion. City Clerk, would, unless there's discussion, if you'd call the roll, please.
Commissioner Reddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
No. No.
Commissioner Motta?
No.
Mayor Morse?
Yes.
Commissioner Hennesall?
No.
Motion fails 2-3.
I'd like to clarify that the commission is under no obligation to explain their vote. And the motion says it's just a reappointment. So now
I
they
think
have-
then,
Yeah.
do their next appointment.
Uh-huh, okay. The next item,
So
They can make another motion.
They need to
oh, I see.
deny.
Okay. This is-
make a motion to deny the reappointment. Consider a resolution finding that Andy Cook, 2834 Oregon Lane, is either unqualified to hold office or is not fit to hold the office or position of board member on the Manhattan Human Rights and Services Board.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? I want to comment. I am terribly disappointed in the majority of this commission that they are calling out a citizen who has volunteered for 3 years, is willing to continue for another 3 years on this board. It will this kind of behavior will have a chilling effect on getting anybody to volunteer to serve on boards and commissions in this community. The city attorney pointed out at the last 2 weeks ago that this provision has never been used in Manhattan, and I think it hasn't been used in other cities that she was able to identify, or maybe only one. And it's because it is so onerous and so punitive. This isn't just and I think the candidate appointee is due an explanation. We have a community that is vibrant, and we've never had this kind of division or divisive rhetoric and behavior before, and it shouldn't be happening now. The community, that we have an appointment process, and it is an ordinance, and it says that the mayor makes appointments. That's what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to make good appointments. These are people who've been serving. I have appointed some other people earlier this year that were Mayor Butler's appointment or Yusha's appointment. They aren't all mine. I'm just reappointing them because they've served well and honorably. And we have an obligation to work in good faith, and I am working in good faith. I don't look up a party affiliation on candidates, or in these cases, I've just been reappointing, and I believe that this board has been functioning as designed, with a 7-member board, with people a diverse group of people serving on that board. And this is causing a divide that will be difficult to heal in the future, and when we ought to be focusing on matters that really
Call the question. Need a second.
I'm not going to do it.
I don't think we.
I am the
yeah,
chair,
I don't
the
think we're doing
mayor,
Robert's
and
rules.
I'm
Well,
going to
that's
I can keep talking. You can't cut me off. I can talk.
No, we didn't accept those.
I can talk. And just like you can talk. And when goes on and on and on, I can have a say here too. I'm going to keep talking. Thank you. So, and I won't be long. I'll be brief. I think that we have an obligation to do the right thing for our community. We have not had this, well, I don't need to say anymore. I've said it all, just like you have. You have put your name and your stamp on these two appointments as, and I believe you're functioning in bad faith. And I can't say that any more strongly. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
I think after a second, we can make comments. I just want to add a couple of more
Okay,
comments
a
to
second,
your
okay.
discussion.
Sure.
After a second is made. But I do think, I understand for another appointment, if you have comments about why that was denied in April, but as far as this particular appointment with Annie Cook, I don't think any of you knew what she looked like till tonight. I don't think any of you knew how she voted, unless you did and you never mentioned it. I don't even think you realized she was on an advisory board till it was brought up. So I think even if you don't have to give a reason, that needs to be at least stated.
Okay. If there are no more comments. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Motta?
Yes.
Mayor Morse?
No.
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you for your service, Annie. I'm sorry that we can't express greater appreciation for your service. The next item is,
I make the motion to deny the reappointment. Consider a resolution finding that Thomas Hanson, 247 Ridge Drive, is either unqualified to hold office or is not fit to hold the office of position of the Historic Board member of the Manhattan Historic Resource Board.
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
Yes, I think Thomas was here, I believe, last week, or 2 weeks ago, and he spoke on his behalf, and I don't think till he came here, we knew what he looked like.
Didn't.
And I think the reason, though you don't have to state it, the reason that was given in April was that he didn't vote the way we wanted him to vote, or some commissioners wanted him to vote. Unfortunately, nobody on any advisory committee or as commissioners know what comes before us. And we make the ultimate decision, regardless of how advisory boards vote. They vote with the information they have in front of them, and ultimately, we are the final say in how that goes. So even if we appoint somebody else in his position or another, Human Rights Advisory Board, Human Resources Board positions, we really don't know how they're going to vote. And that should be accepted because that's why they are there, to make their decisions based on the information that's put in front of them. Not, I wonder how certain commissioners are going to vote on this. That was never their charge for any of the boards or any of the volunteers that are serving on our boards.
Oh, I was talking to one of the other Historic Resource Board members last week sometime, and he told me that, yeah, we figured that the commission would overrule I think on the mall and the Light and Art Museum thing. But the problem is, if every time, that ended up being a quasi-judicial thing, and the Historic Resources Board had different criteria to consider than the commission could consider.
True.
And with the Boys and Girls Club house next to it, we did not have an option at that point to overrule the Historic Resources Board. Because of the way because of the uses and whatever, things like that. On the Light and Art Museum, we could overrule it based on economic impact and various things like that. And so, on the Historic Resources Board thing, if we always had the ability to overrule what they did, then it doesn't matter who's on the Historic Resources Board because we can always overrule them. But in those situations, on that Boys and Girls Club situation, they had more power in this situation than we did, and we're the elected officials, and it's just, the way the rules are set up with the state SHPO and all that stuff, it's just it takes too much of the power to make decisions away from the commission based on the process. And so the only thing Tom was guilty of is not seeing the big picture. And he focused on what he was supposed to focus on, which is what the historic preservation of things, but there's more to the quality of life in the community than just historic preservation. There's what's good for youth, it's what's good for economic vitality, it's what's good for property rights, and so there's more things that we have to consider. And on quasi-judicial boards, if we can't overrule them with a simple majority based on the same facts that they got, then the process is wrong, and he's just a victim of the process in this situation because there's just more to it the commission has to consider, and they can't consider, or don't consider, but they could consider some of the other factors, but the Historic Resources Board just tend to focus too narrowly on just the historic part of things, and that's not the whole picture a lot of times.
In my opinion, the vote of the Historic Preservation Board, they were not able to consider economic impact. Economic impact was a major part of the City Commission's vote, and in my mind, the system worked like it was supposed to. And the other historic preservation, there are different rules for historic preservation, and we our authority for historic preservation flows from the state, State Preservation Office. They have empowered us to make these decisions. If we do away with our board, as you have threatened, to do away with the Historic Resources Board, then we would automatically have to comply with the State Preservation Office rules, which are more onerous than ours are. Our people did not interpret it too rigidly. They did what they were supposed to do. And they're just being caught up, as you said, Mark, being caught up in the politics of this. And it's just terribly unfortunate. I think they functioned in good faith, and they have, in their volunteer status, and I object to calling out a citizen on a board like this as unfit or unqualified, and it's out of line, it is my opinion.
I want to say, there was a time when the Historic Resources Board played a role. That's what saved the Peace Memorial Auditorium. The city came up with a different plan, and because of them, we shifted the design for the Peace Memorial Auditorium. So they do have their role. They are doing their job. Unfortunately, both of these members wanted to serve on the committees and boards they were appointed to because they enjoyed it. They felt they were doing a good job. They felt responsible, and they were caring community leaders.
Last night, I listened to the planning board. They were discussing the criteria for the board for their bylaws, and did they want to, they've been asked, do you want to make any changes? And since 3 of them are appointed by the county, 3 of them appointed by the city, and then the 7th position flips back and forth, their comments were, well, all I ever do is county, like Jerry Reynard has been on there since the late 1990s when I was on the planning board. That's how long he has served. And anyway, it's just so they're looking at whether to allow term limits, and I mean, those kinds of things are fair game, but the sincere efforts of a board member is just an insult, and you can't consider it anything else. At this point, I think I've said as much as I need to. We have a motion and a second, so, well, we haven't asked for public, did we ask for public comment?
You can ask.
Yeah. What?
They did, that was, the public comment was for both motions, I think, weren't
Okay,
they?
well, they just addressed Annie. I thought it was just Annie, because we have 2 different motions. Anyway.
You don't have public comment on the motion, it's on the subject before the motion.
Subject before the motion. Fine, we'll just go home, it's 10:30. Brenda, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
I vote not to deny the reappointment.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
No.
Commissioner Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Okay. I believe that we have, thank you for attending. Appreciate what you've had to say. And the meeting is adjourned.